I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission, June 6th. Ms. Pizzoli, roll call.
Mr. Spagnutis.
Present.
Mr. Klein.
Present.
Ms. Butler.
Present.
Mr. Cummings.
Present.
We are not expecting Mr. Wallner and Mr. Riley. We currently have 4 members present.
Okay, we'll move to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So I'd like to offer a motion to amend the agenda to remove the public hearing for 0624 because we've discussed that's going to require more thorough discussion. We thought there just wasn't the room on the agenda for tonight, and we want to give our full attention to the Pearl Place public hearing. So we'd like to remove that and bring it back at a subsequent meeting. And also to add at the end of the meeting, under old business, the findings and recommendation to the City Council on the maritime report. And that under old business should just take a minute when we're done with Pearl Place. So I offer that motion.
I'll
Do you have
second.
a second? Any discussion?
So moved.
All in favor? of that motion?
Aye.
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 And then I guess we have to vote on the original motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Oh, can I rescind my original motion to approve the original agenda in favor of the amended agenda.
Aye.
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 All right, so moved. All right, so approval of minutes from May 9th, 2024 and May 14th, 2024.
I move to approve both of those.
Second.
Sounds good? All good?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So now we get into public hearing.
Yeah, so we're going to start off. So this is PD 2017-002 Special Mixed Plan Development, known as Pearl Place. And we're going to start off with introduction by Senior Planner Michael Meekins.
Yes.
Take it away.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Michael Meekins, Senior Planner with the City of Annapolis Planning and Zoning. To the right of me is the Director, Chris Jakubiak. And we have in the gallery here, our urban forester, Brian Adams, who may or may not be speaking tonight. So tonight we are introducing PD 2017-002, known as Pearl Place. It's a special mixed plan development and major subdivision. It's located at the intersection of Forest Drive and Old Solomon's Island Road. The project is an assemblage of 17 parcels and proposes a mixed-use building with 28,000 square feet of commercial/retail space, with 77 one-bedroom apartments above that mixed-use building, and in addition, 58 townhomes. Additionally, it includes a parking deck, 2 public streets, as well as access streets for the mixed-use building parking deck and townhouses. It also includes, in this proposal, the supporting utility infrastructure, stormwater management, landscaping, including approximately 200 street trees, open space and protected forest buffer areas, as well as pedestrian and bicycle-friendly walks and paths in and around the proposed development. That is my brief rundown of the overview. I would like to point out one issue that is pretty important. We have, or the applicant has, several APF approvals, but there are 3 outstanding APF approvals from the Department of Public Works that at this time are still being worked out. So with that in mind, we anticipate at least a brief second Planning Commission meeting to finalize those aspects of the APF details that are still in flux. We anticipate that will be worked out, but again, it's most likely going to need a second meeting. So with that in mind, if there are no questions from the commissioners, I would like to go ahead and turn the floor over to the applicant for their presentation.
Great, thanks. And let me just also say, you know, in light of the APF issue, you know, I think it's reasonable, given the size of this project, that we'll hear from the applicant tonight. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions as we go back and forth on things. And then we'll open the public hearing and listen to anything the public wants to say about this. And then my guess is that that'll sort of take us to the end of the night. And then we can adjourn, leave the public hearing open until the next meeting. And that way people can have a chance to go back and watch the video again. And if you have further questions, testimony the public wants to give, we can hear that at the next meeting. And then finish up any other business we have on that.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. So I think with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant to start with the presentation. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Stephen Hyatt for the applicant Parole Place LLC, 200 Westgate Circle, Suite 500, Annapolis, Maryland. Couple of procedural matters. We have our affidavit of posting that is referenced in your exhibit package, but I have the actual posting. Who do I?
Also, and by way of process, we will take your packet with all 15 tabs, and we will enter those into the record.
Okay, perfect. You're going to be receiving some additions to that.
Are these updated, or are they what?
They're
exactly what's in
inserts.
there? They're inserts.
Yep,
okay.
and you have instructions in there where they go.
Thank you.
Okay.
But civil set, well, it's in there. Just a couple replacement pages and some images that we added from the work session that we had with you all in September of '22. And rather than bringing in that whole 70-some page presentation again, we made some select choices to just kind of refresh your memory as to what we had previously discussed and the existing conditions. So you'll see that in there as well. And with that, I just want to thank a few people here. First of all, the planning and zoning staff, Mr. Kubiak for helping us get here this evening, and Tom Smith, who I don't know if he's here, but worked with us for the past going on 7 years to also get us to this point. Also, Alderwoman Pindell Charles is here in the audience, has been a great steward and supporter of this project, so we thank her for her support. And like I said, this has been a 7-year collaborative process with Planning and Zoning, Public Works, you all at the Planning Commission, numerous community members and community groups, and of course our consultants and professionals. We're here located at the corner of Forest Drive and Old Solomon's Island Road. One of the 5 or so gateways into the city. So a very important piece of property. And our goal here is to turn this, dated and invasive overrun property into a thriving community hub. And I think at the end of the night, what you'll see is we've set a new standard for development in the city. As Mr. Meekin said, we've got about 30 or so thousand feet of retail planned, 77 apartments, 1-bedrooms and studios. Above that, there's 58 townhouses on either side of the mixed-use building going down Forest Drive and on Old Solomon's. And we've also provided ample recreational and gathering spaces. You're going to hear more about that. We have a pretty impressive walking trail, I'd like to think. And we have safe, efficient pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular access. And I think one of the most impressive things about this project is the stormwater management facilities and treatment. There's nothing there today, not a single piece of stormwater management. And we are treating not only what's on our site, but stormwater from surrounding sites by the addition of a step pool conveyance system. And I'm not going to step outside my lane and try and explain to you what that is, but it's a big deal. There really aren't any other ones in the city, and this one's impressive. There's also other facilities, microbioretentions and other treatment that we'll get into. There's a planting plan that has several hundred new trees and the equivalent of thousands of new plantings, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. And we have, like I said, a lot of invasive species, and I'll remind everybody what we talked about at the 22 work session where we showed you pictures of the kudzu. And I think the phrase that we used was it looked like a Dr. Seuss book where it was just covering the trees. You couldn't tell what was under the trees. So we have a plan to eliminate that and allow the native forest and flora to thrive and flourish once more. Getting back to that 22 work session, you all gave us some very constructive feedback, and we took that back to the drawing board and have largely incorporated what we heard into the plans that you'll see this evening. Just a couple to hit on. He's not here tonight, but Mr. Waldman asked how the stream would be restored, and as I mentioned, the step pool conveyance system is going to do exactly that. It's going to completely restore the stream and treat more than our site. There were questions about connectivity to adjacent projects, and again, you'll hear more about this trail, that it's going to be well lit and secure, and it does now connect to the Allen Apartments property. There was some questions about connecting to Allen Drive through the road to provide vehicular access. Allen Drive is a private road, and the topography there was so steep and undulating, we couldn't get a road in there, so we provided, the next best thing, which is pedestrian access. And we're going to continue to pursue an easement there to see if we can extend that trail a little bit further onto their property. There were some suggestions to add additional green space on the interior of the project, which we've done next to the townhouses. And we also heard that the blocks of townhouses, the 8s and 10s, was too many, so we broke those up into 4s and 5s and provided some more light and walkways to separate those out, and you'll hear more about the spacing on those shortly. There were a couple things we couldn't do. One was the road connection. It just wasn't feasible. The other one, there was a suggestion to build a suspension bridge across the ravine from the Forest Drive side, or the Old Solomon side, to the Forest Drive side. And as you can imagine, it was cost prohibitive. It required a lot of intrusion into the forest conservation easement area. So again, alternatively, we've provided this walking trail that I think is, you'll hear the length of it. I don't think anybody's provided anything quite like it in the city. And then solar installation, we're still exploring it. I think it's a viable option. We just aren't 100% sure where it makes the most sense, whether it's on the parking deck, on the mixed-use building, even on some of the townhouse structures, but it's on our checklist of many things to do when we get to the grading permit stage. I'm going to call on our professional experts here to go through the particulars of the project, but again, largely the same project that was before you all in September of '22 with a handful of improvements per your suggestions and some feedback from the city. But this project is exactly what the 2009 comprehensive plan calls for. And it's also in line with the comprehensive plan that's currently in process at the city. We're bringing, a mix of retail and a mix of a variety of housing types, 135 units in a market where there's a big demand for housing and not much supply. Again, I think when we're done this evening, hopefully this evening, I hope that you will agree that this is an exceptional project, that this should be the new benchmark, the new standard for design and stormwater and infill type of development in the city. And also that we're providing a huge benefit to the greater Parole community and the entire city of Annapolis. I have 5 witnesses that are going to testify. I have Wayne Newton with Messick and Associates, our civil engineer. I have John Harrison here as well. He's going to talk about land planning elements and some forest conservation criteria. Leo Wilson with Hammond Wilson is our architect. Jordan Crabtree with Lock Collective is our landscape architect. And Mike Klobasco with Wetland Studies and Solutions is our arborist and wetlands guru, is going to talk about all of our trees, existing and new. And we do have a variance request to remove several significant trees from the site, and we're going to go through that as well. And with that, if there are no starter questions, I'm going to jump into my first witness, if that's all right.
Sure. I also wanted to say that as you bring your experts up, it's just worth noting we don't swear witnesses in on this commission, as you know. And we have their CVs in the books, so you can introduce your witness, but you don't have to spend much time on their background. We have that in there, and it's in the record.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Then with that, I will call up Wayne Newton. And also, I'm going to be clicking through what you have in your exhibits. I'm going to be trying to punch the numbers in here to jump around to the pages, so just bear with me. Don't want to not show you what we're talking about. Good evening, Mr. Newton.
Good evening.
Just go ahead, give a little background on your, well, in light of what Mr. Pline said, you're a civil engineer, expert in the field. You've done, how many projects in the city of Annapolis?
I've been an expert civil engineer in the city of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County for about 38 years. Probably I've done thousands of projects over my years, probably hundreds in the city.
And you've been involved with this project for, since the beginning?
2017.
2017.
Yep.
And you're familiar with the site design plan development, site standards, site design standards, forest conservation and subdivision provisions of the city code?
I am.
Okay, let's, well, what we have up here is the cover sheet. Why don't you just clarify for everyone the total acreage, what's being disturbed, what's left undisturbed,
Okay.
zoning and all of that.
I brought some copies so I can read them because I can't read that. All right. So total acreage of the site, 10.27 acres. We're saving a significant portion of that property. Open space will be over 5.6 acres. Recreation area will be over, will exceed the requirement. What's being saved is, one second. There are 3.19 acres of forest conservation. On one area, there's a reforestation of 0.012 that will be saved. On the site, there are 73 existing significant trees. We're clearing 15 and saving the rest. The majority of the trees are either dead, in poor condition, or in fair condition. All the good trees are being saved.
And we'll get into this, but we're treating, we're all of our forest conservation is on site, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing all of that. Could you repeat what you said?
What I just said?
Yeah,
There are 73 significant trees on the site. We're removing 15. The remainder are being saved.
We're removing 14, I think.
14? Okay, 14. All of the trees that are being removed are either dead, in poor condition, or fair condition. All the good condition trees are being saved.
Good? Okay. Then let's go through, and tell me when to jump to the sheets, but the civil overview. So we want to talk here about vehicular access points to the public streets and rights-of-way. Go through for me site circulation, where the buildings are located, obviously the square footage, which we discussed a moment ago, the types of units, and then the natural features of the site, setbacks, pedestrian and vehicular circulation, lighting and waste disposal, and I'll be more than happy to rehash those for you.
I'm good. Can you jump to the aerial view? I think it's sheet 3 or 4.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep. Zoom out a little bit. Yep. So this is an image we put together to show the context of the proposed uses, proposed development on the existing aerial map. You'll see that in the center of the site, there's a large blank area, and I can't point to it, but that's the area being saved for forest conservation right there, correct? And that's also the area we're doing this, what I'll call the significant outfall improvement, which I'll get into details in a minute.
I think I'm hard of hearing. Could you just speak up a little bit?
Yeah.
Thanks.
That area is also where we're doing that significant outfall improvement that you heard of earlier, but I'll get to details of that in a minute.
Got it. You said significant outfall improvement.
Significant outfall improvements.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the corner of Forest Drive and Old Solomons Island Road, there's a 29,000 square foot commercial mixed-use building, first floor retail, 77 apartments above it. Behind that, there's a parking court and a parking deck. There's also some areas in the back there for gathering and entertainment, which are the hatched areas behind the commercial building. South of that, along Old Solomons Island Road, we have townhouses that are fronting on a public street which we're creating, which will actually connect Old Solomons Island Road to Neal Farm Drive as well as to Forest Drive. That's that area that Mr. Hyatt's showing you now. So those are townhouses that are located along a public street. The public street will end pretty much where Mr. Hyatt's cursor is right there at the last end of the townhouses. The rest of the roadways on this property will be private, intended for access to the mixed-use facility. As far as trash collection, the bright white area in the corner right there, that's a dumpster for residential use. There'll also be trash collection underneath of the building. Parking for
Just to clarify though, anything that's labeled road A or B will be a public road.
Yes.
So it's only the top left and the top of the parking deck that's private.
That's correct.
Okay. And, one question that I had is, in the row of townhouses between 1 through 8 and 9 through 16, I've seen in a couple different diagrams that the T on the right-hand side, is that paved? Is that like for a fire truck turnaround? Is that what that's for? Is that why?
It is, yes.
Is there a reason why you couldn't connect that up to road A?
You could. It would break up the pedestrian walkway that we're trying to get circulation through the site.
There's nothing grade prohibitive there, though.
There's no grade prohibition there now.
Okay.
Just trying to get a dedicated walking path through the site. The fire T as shown meets the fire requirements. Okay. So there is parking underneath the building, as I said, for that use as well. On the other side of the stream, if you can move over, Stephen. You can see there's a separate entrance there off of Forest Drive with townhouse units in there. Those roads are all private. And if you look at the double lines that kind of run between the two, that's the pathway that you'll hear more about from Mr. Crabtree, but Mr. Hyatt spoke of earlier. A pretty significant pathway system The intention here is pedestrian connection between the Allen Apartments, if we can get the right of way to do it. The eastern side of the site, the western side of the site, Forest Drive, Old Solomon's Island Road, and Neal Farm Drive. So trying to interconnect all the communities with a pedestrian pathway. Along Forest Drive, there's an existing storm drain, which is right at our entrance. That
There's an existing what?
storm drain
Storm drain.
that is in our entrance that we're reconfiguring and rebuilding. In essence, we're rebuilding that storm drain to drain Forest Drive, which will then drain down into that outfall improvement I discussed earlier.
Can you point to that with your cursor, just so I can see what you're talking about?
Which one are you talking about?
The outfall improvement or the storm
Over
drain?
here? So the outfall is over here. And you'll
Well,
see it.
that's the step pool conveyance system. Where's the outfall that you were just talking about?
That's the same thing. The step pool conveyance system is the outfall improvement we're talking about.
Right,
Okay. And it's coming from Forest Drive?
right.
Actually, it's collecting all the stormwater from the entire site as well as Forest Drive. We've designed this thing as really a regional facility, if you will. It's providing stormwater treatment for not only this site, but everything that drains to it, which includes the site that's between the east and west sections of this development, as well as everything that drains to Forest Drive. And if you're familiar with Forest Drive, that's a low point in Forest Drive, so all the commercial across the street as well drains to it. And we're providing a significant improvement there.
Do you know how many acres generally drain to that
Yes,
pool conveyance system?
18.75.
Do you want me to go to stormwater now?
Sure, if you want to go there. We're talking about it.
So we'll get to make sure we get to waste disposal, slopes, you got that, lighting.
Lighting will be throughout the development for residential purposes as well as on the commercial. That'll be mostly wall pack lighting and lighting off the building.
This is, where am I go for
Go to sheet.
101?
There you go.
This shows the,
There you go. So this sheet shows that step pool conveyance system better than the aerial did. You can see the step pools that are coming down into the existing ravine. Today, where the outfall of that existing storm drain from Forest Drive dumps out, there's a significant head cut in this stream, and it's where the outfall is shown here. Can you just put your cursor where that is?
yeah,
Right there. Come down to the first pool. Right there. So right there today, there's a significant head cut, which is erosion in the stream from the upland that drained through there. The storm drain itself is in somewhat disrepair, so we're replacing the entire system. We've intentionally placed a large pool there to settle water and allow sediments to settle out. You can also see that the storm drain from the eastern part of the development comes into the same pool. From there, stormwater will convey down the hill through each pool. Each pool is basically a 1-foot vertical drop with stilling basin for each one. So it's literally a babbling brook, if you will, when you get this thing finished. The gray shaded area in the middle of it is what's called a cascade. That's a grade control structure, if you will, because we didn't have enough pools to make a 1-foot vertical difference from top to bottom without continuing to go down and disturb the wetlands, so we didn't want to do that. We put a grade control structure in there called a cascade, and it basically is a 5-foot drop between two pools. It's filled with natural stone to allow the water to cascade down that hill. Again, each pool is a 1-foot vertical drop. The entire system is designed for management of the 10-year storm from the entire drainage area. As well as it'll pass the 100-year storm for the entire drainage area. As you'll see, it was also designed just to the east of the step pool system. There's the existing city sanitary sewer main that we didn't impact the easement with, but that's in that location as well.
Quick question. So was Neal Farms your guys' project? Did you guys do that, or was it somebody else?
Somebody else.
So maybe this is a question for city. They have a similar, certainly not of this magnitude, step swale, if I remember correctly. Anybody know how well that's held up?
Unfortunately, that's out of my wheelhouse, stormwater management. And that was an excellent question for DPW. Unfortunately, they're not here tonight.
Well, so maybe you could take that
Yeah,
question back.
I'll
and
make a
see.
note of that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this step pool was at the request of DPW. And, not speaking from a technical standpoint, but we did walk the site a few times to look at what's behind the Townsend Neal Farms. And in terms of scale, like you said, it's really more of a rain garden comparatively. But it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that was the big talk in the Neal Farms project was, how does this get maintained? Because these things do need some maintenance. They have to get cleaned out periodically. And is that something, in your subdivision plat, you have sort of boilerplate for homeowners association? Is that something that homeowners fees would go to maintain all of that?
Homeowner or property owner, yeah.
Property owner would
Yep.
go to maintaining all that infrastructure? Okay.
Well, in this case, won't this be part of the conservation easement?
It'll be in it, yeah, but the maintenance for the step will still fall to us.
Meaning the developer or?
Whoever owns it,
Right, I was gonna
yes.
say usually, so if the city of Annapolis has a conservation easement, what's happening right now is our conservation easements, we don't have money to even take the invasive species off the trees. So we would love something, we can talk about it in the agreement that talks about who will actually pay for maintaining the step pool conveyance system, and then the trees that are in the conservation easement.
Okay. Okay.
So to continue with the stormwater management light, that's the regional facility that's basically improving and stabilizing the outfall. Within the pods of the development itself, there are also microbiome retention facilities scattered throughout to provide environmentally sensitive design volume that's required by the state. So the ESD volume is completed up in the upland portion of the site, and the outfall improvement is down below. There's also an infiltration device behind the mixed-use building for roof leader infiltration to limit the amount of water that goes down to the stream.
I want to show the microbiomes. I have those
So,
on the terrace as well.
yep. Also on the terrace, on the front, if you can you zoom in at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the sheet I wanted.
There you go. There's gray shaded areas on the front terrace, which is really kind of a interesting feature, which I'm sure Mr. Wilson will get into. There are stormwater management devices there to treat roof runoff as well as patio runoff on the site, on the front
Are
of
they
the building.
just bioretention ponds or planters filled with,
They're
native species?
the ones on the terrace.
There are several stormwater BMPs, and I'm just wondering what kind of, are they bioretention?
So on the terrace, they're more like urban planters, yes, stormwater planters. The others are bioponds. There's also one infiltration device.
What was it?
Infiltration, so after the water is cleaned and water quality improvement, it's put in the ground.
In the ground.
All right.
All right.
So then I have the plat here. We still have let's come back to the plat.
Okay,
What do you think about that?
that's fine.
Okay. Let's talk about the design generally. You've alluded to all of the stormwater. We've concentrated development along the corners here and the already developed areas, but can you verify that this design minimizes impacts to the property and that we've achieved we'll call it maximum natural resource protection?
It does. Can you go back to the aerial view?
Sure. Which one was that? 98, 94? Bear with me. That was...
It's going to be earlier in the set. It's like sheet 4 of the set. There you go, right there. So you can see on this photo that the areas that have no white overlay on them are all preserved. In essence, all the steep slopes, all the stream buffers, all the stream areas, there's wetlands at the base of the hill, all of that has been preserved. Generally, to kind of give you a synopsis of how we designed this facility, this property, we took what was previously developed, what was clearly, obviously cleared, and worked within it as best we could. There's one small area at that fire T that was talked about earlier, where we are pushing back the edge, but quite frankly, with the invasives over these past 7 years, that forest has pretty much died at this point. The invasives have pulled it down. But in essence, we're working within what was previously at one time cleared, everything outside of steep slopes and outside of steep slope buffers. So all the treed area you see in the middle is all the steep slopes, all the stream buffers, all the wetlands, and everything else we've worked with. That was created through a collaborative effort between us and the Office of Planning and Zoning, Tom Smith, through a number of meetings, as well as the meeting with you all back in 2022. So we think we've worked very well together to limit the amount of development that's intrusive into anything that would be considered an environmental benefit. And we think with what we're providing with stormwater is a significant environmental benefit for the community.
Okay. How about the general, or specific locations of the buildings and the structures, all the open space, all the elements of the project, landscape, pedestrian, vehicular access, all the connections? In your opinion, are they adequate, safe, and efficient, and designed to minimize any impacts to the surrounding area?
They are. As you can see by the aerial, we have provided interconnectivity, as I discussed before, from Forest Drive to Old Solomon's Island Road, as well as Neal Farm Drive, as well as pedestrian access to the eastern pod. The buildings were placed to feel like a front facade along Old Solomon's Island Road, although they really front or they really rear on a public road in the back. The mixed-use building was aligned at the exact same alignment to kind of create a sense of alignment down the roadway. And we have some grade issues to deal with along Forest Drive, hence the terrace along the front, which pulled that line of building back some. But, and I'm sure Mr. Wilson will get into the intricacies of that terrace. That's a really interesting part of the project, would be really a great focal point for the community. But as you can see, the roads are generally basically at the edge of the developable area along from the one coming off Forest Drive. That's setting the edge. The only thing beyond it is a pedestrian pass system, which again interconnects all the communities.
Okay, how about the,
And refresh my memory that the building between the two parts of the development is, that's a commercial building?
it's a mixed use, on the L here, the corner?
No, between,
No.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
That's a commercial building. Yep, not part of the project.
Right.
Yep. I think it's for lease right now, if you're interested. Let's talk about the open areas of the project and their design. Existing features, buffer areas, buffer yards, and open space.
All right. So all the open spaces provided on site is 5.6 acres. It includes the forested areas, but we provided also open areas amongst the units themselves. So if we're on the south end along Neal Farm Drive, there's a nice area there for maybe a dog walk or dog park. There's areas at the end of the fire T, which will allow some community use. There's areas along the east side of the main entrance road along the mixed-use building behind those parking spaces with that pedestrian pathway. If you can go back to the fire T, at the end of the fire T, there is an area there that's for gathering that can be used right there. Yep. There's also open space areas behind the townhouses down along Neal Farm Drive, and at the end, in that area there, that would be used for community areas.
Is there any playground or any kind of area for children to play?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet.
Okay.
So. Okay. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
room- there's
if
room.
we have room for something like that, but again, haven't gotten there yet.
Behind the mixed-use building, that large paver patio area would be used for gathering space and community events there as well. We've talked about, having events there as well. On the eastern pod, you can see the large area between the townhouses and the ravine, right there. That would be community open space as well as open space behind the townhouses right there, correct. So we tried to intersperse community open space and open area for recreation throughout the development to make it convenient for the residents.
So in your calculations for recreation open space, you don't use any of the forested area in that calculation. I mean, I remember reading that if you include that, you way exceed. But the part in your calculation that's actually usable for people to sit and walk their dogs or do whatever they do, that space alone meets the requirement for APF.
It does,
That's
correct.
Yeah, anything that's in the recreational space is actually usable space. So it doesn't exceed the slope or anything like that. Like you can go throw a Frisbee, kick a ball, have a picnic. That's the kind of space we're providing.
Could you say that again? I couldn't hear the end of that.
The recreational space isn't going to be, it's all usable. None of it is sloped in a way that you couldn't actually use it. You could sit there and kick a ball, throw a Frisbee, or have a picnic if you wanted to.
So, and it's not in the conservation easement?
That's correct.
None of it is, no. Let's talk about trees.
All right.
And we're going to remove a few, as you mentioned, and we'll get into the specifics on that with Mr. Klobasco and Mr. Arison in a bit, but let's talk about the number of trees, the locations, and then also street trees. We've got quite a few of those, so
We do.
let's talk about those. I'll jump to one.
There you go. You're right, same place I am. Go to the next page. So the dots on the page are obviously the trees. Green means good tree, yellow means fair tree, red means dead or dying or poor. You can see the ones that are where they're dispersed throughout the community. You can see, as I testified earlier, that those that are coming out are either yellow or red. That was intentional to save the good trees as well as the environmental areas around them. So the 14 trees that we're removing are the ones that you see within the development area that are either yellow or red.
Could you say that last part again?
Ask that again?
I heard the 14 trees that are removing, and then I didn't hear the last 3 words.
That are yellow or red within that area that's shown on that plan. Okay. As far as replacing trees, we do have an area of reforestation. It's 0.21 acres or 1.2 acres on the eastern pod down near Allen Apartments that we're providing some reforestation on site. The remainder of the reforestation to meet the forest requirements per the city code will be placed in street trees around the site. I think the earlier testimony was 200 street trees. I believe that's correct. So that's where we're meeting that requirement. So there'll be a number of new trees put in on the project. They're interspersed along the streets. They're also interspersed in between the units in open space areas.
I can't really hear you anymore. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could you say that a little louder?
Sure.
200, I heard 200 street.
You heard 200? Okay.
Yeah, I heard 200. And can you just point with your cursor where you think those trees are going?
Along every street.
Yeah.
Along every street?
Yep,
Or
I'm gonna
just
have
the ones
our-
in the project? Yeah, right. Like the entrance off of Forest Drive and along, yeah, just if the cursor even just shows a little bit of
Yeah,
where.
we'll get, I'm going to have Mr. Crabtree show you specifically where all those trees are going to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
So we talked about, specifically removing those trees, retaining the others, and then otherwise, we comply with the city's forest conservation technical manual and the code.
We do.
Okay.
I have a quick question about that. I noticed you didn't use our technical manual that we adopted in March of 2019. Is there any way you can go back and just calculate using our updated code? I'm sure it's not going to, well, I'm not sure, but hopefully it won't change the calculation, but it would be good to have that information because some of that, what's in your forest conservation calculation doesn't make sense anymore just because we don't have, some of the, we eliminated some of the things that are in the forest conservation worksheet that you gave us.
Yeah, we can take a look at that in accordance with that requirement.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
because your initial FCP is from 2017. That's basically
correct.
the issue. Yeah, it would be nice to know that
That's updated.
Yeah, I will tell you that this FSD plan was updated recently because of the passing of time. So this plan you're looking at is current.
But there's no more break-even point, and there's no offset for forest mitigation and that stuff. So it would be confusing for this to be approved like this. So if you could go back and just use the updated form, that would be great.
Yep, we can do that. Look at that.
Okay.
And just to head off any questions I might ask, are you going to have somebody come up and talk later on specifically about the variance criteria?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll hold my questions. So
Okay.
we'll get there.
Yep, thank you. Okay, how about, and again, Mr. Klobasco and Harrison, Mr. Klobasco specifically can speak to the FSD that we updated earlier this year. Let's talk about the plan development criteria, and do we comply with the code standards on bulk and density, and then also the site design plan review criteria?
We do comply with those requirements. From a density perspective, we are below the allowable density. I forgot what your second question was.
Site design plan review.
Site design plan review, yes. We reviewed this project versus site design plan review requirements. And we created it in accordance with those. It meets all those requirements.
Okay, great. How about infrastructure, utilities, facilities, are they adequate to serve the project and interconnect with existing facilities?
They are, and you heard testimony earlier from the city that we have APF approvals from many agencies, but not DPW. But in our APF report, we prove that all those APF criteria are met. We're simply waiting for DPW to confirm them.
Okay.
I have a quick question. I was looking at the adequate public facilities for, recreation was the first one. And the director back in December did the calculations based on 51 townhouses and 40 apartments. And now there are 58 townhouses and 77 apartments. And so it's 82,000 square feet of more livable space. So I realized that it's probably within the project that you're saying has 240,000 square feet of recreation. I'm just wondering, in the memo from the director, and maybe I'm asking the wrong person, where is the recreation space that you're talking about? Is it identified? It's not identified in the memo at all. So if this, I guess the person I should be asking is a staff person.
Yeah, the 82,000 square feet is the rec space for the 58 townhouses and the 77 apartments. The 240,000, that's the open space. That includes forest conservation and all of that. Those are separate figures.
So that's what I'm getting at. I'm not sure in this memo that talks about recreation, that adequate public facilities approval for recreation. I have 240,000 square feet of, it says on-site public recreation space. And I just don't see, it's not identified in the memo at all. It's behind this and it's next to that and here it is. Because all the other memos we've received on APF, they're pretty specific about where.
Yeah, I think that, sounds like a clerical error. Shouldn't be referring to the 200 and some thousand feet as the recreational space. And we can show you on these plans where it
Yeah, I
is.
thought maybe that was wrong, but in terms of the calculation of townhomes and apartments, maybe that could just be updated as well. I'm not sure it's going to make a big difference, but it's right now.
The current calculation for 58 townhouses and 77 apartments requires 82,000 feet. We're providing 82,910 square feet.
Yeah, you guys have done that in your right. I guess this is really a question for staff.
Yeah.
Can
The director
we have
of,
the APF?
yes, the director of Recreation and Parks has reviewed the current plan, the plan you're seeing tonight, and updated that letter that she supplied in December 2023 with one that's dated May 2024. And she knew precisely where the open space was on the plan. The applicants haven't really described in detail where they are, and I suppose as they get to the landscape architect, they'll get a little more into that, but the spaces are shown in a number of drawings here, and she's provided an updated
Okay,
form.
so we have an updated copy of the.
Yeah, which will be packaged with the APF certification at the next meeting.
For all factors.
For all things, yes. Yes.
Thanks.
You're talking about, let's go back to infrastructure, utilities,
Okay.
facilities. wrap
Can I
that
just
up.
jump in on APF one more thing? I noticed for the adequate public facilities for schools, the 58, no, I take that back. There's an exemption for meeting the adequate public facilities for schools for apartments. Is that correct?
One-bedroom units.
Could you talk about that? Because I'm just wondering, there are people in apartments that have children, so just trying to understand the exemption a little bit better.
You're asking about APF? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't really know if it, we're one-bedroom units, code says you're exempt, so we're exempt. I don't know how much more I can get into that. Is there
No, I
something
was just
specific?
curious about the exemption. What is that assumption? Then maybe that's a staff thing. Do you just assume that people that live in apartments don't have children? And
Just
that's
one
why-
bedroom.
Well, for one bedroom, that's the case.
One bedroom,
Yeah.
so no kids. Okay,
That's what the assumption is.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's correct.
So you're gonna, the estimate is 2.9 kids are gonna be, out of 135 units, 2.9 kids are gonna go to middle school, 2.9 kids are gonna go to high school, and 5 students to elementary school. My comment is, out of 135, that doesn't sound realistic, but if it's what you've got.
How many units are one bedroom?
I'd say all of them are
All of them are
one-bedroom,
one
some
bedroom.
are studios.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there are studios also?
And the large, they range between what, 415 and
To maybe 600 and some square feet.
They're pretty small.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's good.
No, I like the idea of small units. I'm just saying out of 135 units.
Do you guys have an
Dozen
idea of
people
the
go to
price
school.
point of the apartments, or no?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Depends on when we can build it. Yeah, I mean,
Actually, since you asked that question, I have another similar question, and maybe we'll get there when you talk about parking, but is the cost of parking spaces built into the rents, or spots going to be à la carte? So you can pay, if you didn't have a car, you could pay less rent, or are they basically putting the cost of all the parking on all, basically putting across the cost
Yeah,
of all the.
Again, I
TBD.
think it'll depend on final numbers when we do our final pro forma, but we have plenty of parking, and we're hoping that people ride bikes and take the bus, because there are 2 bus routes that connect to the property.
Well, if just some advice, if I may, if you make the parking cost à la carte, so you pay less if you don't need a car, you're not paying for parking that you don't use. Great incentive.
Noted, thank you.
I mean, that's your business rules, up to you. But
Yep.
if
Thank
that's something you want to incentivize, that's something you can do.
Just real quick, Ms. Butler, on the student generation, those, we're just going off of the data that it's the County Board of Education generates for a per unit basis. I think those numbers have changed a little bit over the years, but what you have is the most current data.
As of January 2024.
January, yeah. Let's talk about the traffic impact.
Okay.
It was analyzed through the city's process. They conducted a traffic impact study, which has been updated. Let's go through those points, if you will.
Right. So Lenhart Traffic Consultants was hired by the city to conduct a traffic analysis. The existing intersection in existing conditions for Old Solomons Island Road and Forest Drive. Go to that page to show that somewhere. Currently, there you go. Currently does not operate at acceptable levels of service.
Could you say it again? It currently
does not operate at acceptable levels of service.
Okay.
So therefore, obviously, anything you add to it doesn't help it. So there's a mitigation proposal that's been approved to restripe the intersection and do signal timing improvements to allow that intersection to be brought back up to a level of service D as required by the code.
Could you point out where that is on this map?
Sure.
This is the intersection right here.
Okay. So you're going to bring it up to a D level by adding stripes?
Correct. So one of the things we're going to do is on Old Solomons Island Road, there's enough room there for 2 lanes today, but it's not striped as such. So we're going to widen, we're going to basically restripe it to allow a right turn lane and a left, or a right through and a left turn lane there as well. And then we're going to adjust signal timing to stop the delay. There's a significant delay on one of the legs. So that'll bring it back up to level service D.
Is that a modern traffic light? Or is that
Is it a what? I'm sorry?
is that a modern traffic light that has
Synchro?
cameras that can alter the timing, or is it?
It does have cameras, and I'm not the traffic signal designer, so I can't tell you if it's modern or not, but it does have cameras. I drive through it every day. So,
Okay. Let's talk about roadway improvements. Jump to that. 131. Is that the right one?
that'll work.
I'll go down. You tell me.
We went about roadway improvements. What we're doing?
Yeah, what's our plan here?
Okay. So you're talking about, can you zoom in on the commercial piece?
Sorry.
So as I discussed, we're doing a little bit of restriping at the corner for the intersection. We're also doing a little pull-offs and XL decel into the site along Old Solomons Island Road there and down south as well. We're doing minor widening along Forest Drive again for XL decel. The most important feature that we've done here is by incorporating the pedestrian pathway that pulls the traffic off of the intersection and hopefully will allow people to be pedestrians, as you suggested, with no cars, and walk and connect to the bus routes. So the interconnectivity between those is important. As far as right-of-ways and connecting to the Forest Drive and Old Solomons Island Road, you can see that. You can also see the connection to Neil Farm Drive.
Okay. Let's jump back to the plat here.
Okay.
So. Can you confirm that the preparation, of the preliminary subdivision plat meets standards of Title 20?
I can. The standard of Title 20 requires a plat to show boundaries, easements, rights-of-ways, lots, setbacks, and meets and bounds. It does show that. Shows those requirements. It also shows the existing parcels that are being combined. I think you heard earlier there were 17 existing parcels that are being turned into these lots. It shows the combination of those parcels and re-subdivision into the lots. And it shows the open space areas. It also shows the private rights-of-way, which is that page which you're on there. It also shows the public rights-of-way, which are on the west side of the property.
And also this area, Ms. Butler, is the recreation space. You can see it's hashed in a few places, but it's on the plat as well. So there's some spaces here, here.
And it doesn't show trees, but so is it just an open space with no trees? Is it?
The plat isn't intended to show trees. The site plan shows the trees.
Right, I'm just asking, I can't tell from this, and I'm not flipping back right now, but is that an area of just open
It'll be a
space?
mix of plantings and grasses and trees. Okay.
So with respect to things like setbacks and the rest of the bulk regulations, the special mixed plan use development and the associated NPDU programs have some relief on these standards. Have you asked for any use of that relief anywhere?
I don't think we did we? No, I think everything is to code. I don't think we had relief needed for any of the setbacks or anything like that.
Okay, that was what I saw, but I just wanted to ask the question to make sure.
No, I don't. Did we?
No, you're not.
No. Yeah, I mean, one more time, other than the variances to the trees, everything's,
Right, so setbacks, height requirements.
yep,
Certainly, you went at great length to talk about FAR, and you're way below what's what's required in any of the districts.
Yep.
But I just wanted to make sure you didn't have to take advantage of any of the relief you could get on those two programs.
the plan development advantages and why it made sense here, I think Mr. Harrison will be able to tell you why. Worked
Okay.
out really well here. But Mr. Newton, for the record, can you confirm that the project meets all the applicable code standards for plan developments and site design plan review, the general design standards? There's additional standards for B2 zones because the corner is B2, and then the subdivision preliminary plat standards.
I do.
That's all I have for Mr. Newton. And of course, we'll keep him here for you all to ask questions, but if none others,
I don't know if this is the right time, but I was curious about the MPDUs, moderately priced dwelling units. I can't remember this, and maybe somebody can help. I think in the last version, you were going above and beyond the bare minimum requirements for MPDUs. Is that right?
We're providing what was on the books when we submitted in 2017. So I think it's 12% for sale and 6% for rentals.
So 12% of the 135, or
Well, that'd be if they were for sale, and 6% if they're rentals. And the apartments are definitely going to be rentals, and we're undecided on the townhouses.
so roughly how many affordable? I guess for the audience and for people watching, they should know this is not affordable housing, it's market rate housing. And under the law, we have a minimum requirement for moderately priced dwelling units. And I'm just trying to figure out what you're proposing. And I thought it was more than the bare minimum. That's kind of my question.
It'd be, for the apartments, it'd be 5 MPDUs, and for the townhouses, it'd be 4.
So 4 moderately priced dwelling units for the townhomes and 5 for the apartments. So a total of 9 for 135 units. That's my question. Thank you.
Well, just to clarify, these units, as we mentioned before, are smaller, and by their very design and nature will be, how do I say this, proportionately priced to the market. So, we aren't providing a swimming pool and a gym and all those things that require big rents that they're getting out on Riva Road and over by the town center. So, we intend this to be, for lack of a technical term, reasonably priced.
Naturally reasonably priced, just by virtue of the size.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's great.
Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you. Stick around.
Thank you. Will do.
Go ahead and just state your name and address for the record.
John Harrison, 707 Glendon Avenue, Annapolis, 21403.
And you've been a expert in land planning and design, land design for the planning and zoning director.
They don't recognize that. To the extent they recognize experts.
Where's
yeah.
that man?
So then we know you're familiar with the code and the comp plan and the current plan and process. Can you just run through how we meet the requirements or the purposes of the plan development?
Sure. First, I'm just going to preface all my remarks by saying this site was made for the plan development process. When you're talking about 17 parcels, 4 different zones, I mean, just imagine if they all developed individually, what you'd have out there. So this, like I said, this site was made for it. The only way you can create a unified project here is through the plan development process. As you know, when you were talking about height and bulk, the Planning Commission has broad leeway in the plan development process to establish, to require different heights and bulks based upon input from a variety of sources. So I don't think there's any question but that this meets the purposes of the plan development ordinance.
And we're compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and consistent with the city's comp plan?
Well, let's start with the comp plan. It's consistent with the 2009 comp plan. With some reluctance, I'll say that it's consistent with the Upper West Street plan and with the 2040 plan. And I say with some reluctance because the 29 plan is the governing plan right now. It's the plan of record. And it is compatible with the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, a project like this begins to set the standard for projects that come after it. I mean, if you look at 1901 West and all the controversy that surrounded that back in the day, you'll see that other projects coming in now are using the same sidewalk treatment and a lot of other things that were established for that section of West Street. And this project does transition from commercial, higher commercial towards Route 2 back to the single-family parole neighborhood. And I'll also say that it's been under consideration for around 7 years to ensure that there was neighborhood input in the highest quality project.
And what we've proposed here, this plan development, approval of it won't result in any greater adverse impacts to the surrounding area compared to, as you said, development that might otherwise be permitted if we didn't go through the plan development process.
Yeah, special mixed development, you can do a whole bunch of uses, but most of the uses that are proposed in this particular project are already uses that are permitted in the various zoning districts that exist on site. So I think that the fact that they're providing additional connections, I think that their environmental work, it would not have any greater impact on the neighborhood than if it was developed as a by right development.
And what does a project like this really mean for the city of Annapolis, not just the parole area?
It's a benefit to the city. I mean, we're taking an area at Old Solomon's Island Road and Forest Drive that at that intersection where you just got kind of buildings that were dropped down with surface parking, and we're turning that into more of an urban corner, as I said, to start to set the scheme for future development. We're catty-cornered from the back of a grocery store, which isn't exactly the finest urban amenity along a major street. But the city will benefit in many ways. You've heard it's going to benefit environmentally. Whether you like the 6% MPDU number or not, that's the number on the books for rental. It will provide some affordable housing. Based upon the unit type, those units will probably be more affordable than a standard larger apartment. So, and I'm not going to get into tax base and things like that. I look at things from just purely a land use perspective. So I think that it would be tough to argue that this would not be of benefit to the city.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, are there any scenic, historic, or archaeological resources involved in this site?
Not that I know of. I mean, in my time with the city, this particular site never came up as a place where there were historical resources. Although, it's used during the Civil War. I used to walk around my neighborhood in Northern Virginia and find mini balls. So you never know what you're going to find sometimes. But it hasn't been identified in any documents that I know of to have those resources.
And generally, the project meets all the code standards and in your opinion, warrants approval?
I believe it does warrant approval. I think that the faster we approve it, and the sooner it gets built, the better it'll be for the city overall and for the neighborhood.
Commissioners have any questions for Mr. Harrison? I'm going to bring him back to talk about forest conservation variance to the tree removal, but that's all I have for him now.
Is that a promise or a threat?
Promise.
No, I think you hit it on the head. That's exactly what I was thinking when I first started going through this again, is that this is exactly the kind of project that the plan development program was made for. Because like you said, it would be a mess if you did it all individually.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, come on down. State your name and address for the record.
I can. Leo Wilson with Hammond Wilson Architects, 430 4th Street here in Annapolis.
And you are a known quantity expert architect in the city of Annapolis?
Well, I'm a registered architect here in the state of Maryland, and I've been practicing here in Annapolis for about 33 years.
So you're familiar with all the code requirements?
I am.
All right, let's get into it. Could you explain the architecture, overall aesthetic, character of the neighborhood, compatibility of our project?
Yeah, I think I could do that.
Great.
So let's go to another image here, if we could. It's probably easiest for me to describe what we're looking at rather than just trying to respond to the question, if that's okay.
Where'd you want to go?
Yeah, we can work from these. Can you zoom in on one of them?
Pick one. Pick one.
The upper left. Yeah, let's start there. So what we have here is kind of a transitional site, as Mr. Harrison described. And what we tried to pick up in this location were cues from different sources that are interesting to us. So we worked with Tom Smith at Planning and Zoning for several years on different iterations. This is the corner of the development, and you can see that the corner is highlighted with a higher percentage of glass to solid wall to try and open that corner up and create a sense of place for this location. The building changes as it moves away from the corner with the introduction of masonry elements that start to set a rhythm for the building. You can see it's not continuous on both sides. It goes and stops and starts. The intent was to create layering in the facade to add interest to the building and to give it its own character that relies on some reference to the architectural elements you might see in an urban environment and some reinterpretation of those pieces. We've taken the first and second floor and articulated those in a slightly different way, and then on the upper level where the apartments are as well, we've stepped that back a little bit to control the scale, and this was after discussions with Planning and Zoning about the appropriateness for a 4-story structure or even larger, and in the end, the agreement was that the 3-story element seemed to work the best. You have to keep in mind that there's quite a bit of grade that goes around this building, so it changes dramatically from this corner to the interior space. We followed the street lines as much as made sense to us, and where we are not able to follow the street lines, we've created some exterior spaces that Jordan will talk about in just a few minutes.
I have a quick question, Leo.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson. Is, in that picture we were looking at just a moment ago, are those cisterns on top of the building?
They're devices that we're hoping to capture the rainwater in and then use to water the landscape on the property, rather than go to a conventional system that puts it in the rain barrels. It's just too cumbersome to maintain. So we think we can do it with those on the roof.
Thank you. I think it's a great feature.
Yeah, don't take this as criticism, because I don't mean it this way, because I like it. I think it's just aesthetically pleasing, but has sort of like a New England mill feeling to the building. I mean, I like it. I'm just sort of curious where you
Yeah.
sort of inspiration came from.
There's a lot of pieces that went into the kind of the creation of the vocabulary and the general sense of this building. You have the downtown of Annapolis, which is very traditional, very small scale. And then as you move into the county, the character has changed dramatically with the development of some of the pieces that we see out there. So this is intended to transition from what's happening in the county, which is much, much larger scale, to what's happening in the city. So, and the references that we used were more, they picked up an industrial piece, which a lot of the perimeter of Annapolis, still contains pieces of. So you'll see at the top there, these are some buildings that we looked at. There's Remington Row and some other buildings that we liked. I like the mix of a little bit of more constructive architecture that you see in the upper right, and also the layering that you see in the lower upper left and lower right. So those were kinds of things we were thinking about. And then when you think about layering the traditional pieces with contemporary elements, like the corner in the lower right image, we thought that mix starts to say we're not trying to be a traditional historic structure. We're trying to be something that describes a new approach to how this is done, and we think this is just the right corner for it. So in this image, you can see on the upper right, there's door assemblies that are intended to tilt open for our retail space, and I'll talk more about that when we look at the plan. And then again, the mix of traditional masonry and some more iron elements we think works well. So these were the things we were looking at. Now, one of the things you need to know about the project is the first floor retail space. We've got a vision of that space to be a gathering place for not only the people who live here, the people in the community in the larger Annapolis area. And these doors are intended to open up to plazas on the inside and the outside of that L. And our hope is that we can work with other members of our group to get more of a kind of gathering, almost like the market houses downtown, but at a larger scale. So you'll see that in other larger communities. We just don't have it here in Annapolis yet. So, gathering space is a big part of what we're trying to create here.
Yeah, speaking of the retail space, so one of the things I see is that there are a number of first floor, quite small retail spaces, like close to 1,000 square feet, which is awesome. Is it for the larger retail spaces, you think those could be sectioned to make smaller, to allow for smaller scale local businesses to who don't need a large space that is flexible like that?
We do. Can we go to the plan? Can you pick that up?
We talked about that kind of thing in one of the prior work sessions.
We did, and we took it to heart. You'll see when you think about those elevations, how the bays are set up, and they're set up in modules that we think would support subdivision of the interior space. So here's our first floor plan. Go back to that one for a second, and you'll see we're showing that large market area along the top of that page, right? And that enters into the outdoor plaza that Jordan will talk about in just a little bit. It's really exciting. I think it's going to be a great outdoor space for adults and kids. The backside also has that. You can see the corner is kind of a larger single space. We're hoping maybe we could get a specialty restaurant to take that. And then you'll see along the bar to the left, we just kind of divided it up to illustrate that there's some flexibility there. So you'll see a smaller one that goes right through from the street back to our court, and then other ones. And all of these are intended to be split up as the tenancy, dictates for us. So let's go back to the 3D images, and then we'll run through those. I don't want to take a ton of time because we've been through this before, but I do want to make sure we cover some things that are important. One thing you'll see there is, just go back that one for a second.
Go back to...
no, you can continue. Let's go back to 3Ds. We'll talk about that in a minute.
So we have these two. Which one do you want?
Well, the elevations are hard to read. It's the perspective images.
These?
Yeah. So let's go to the one that's off to the right on the top there. Can you zoom in on that a little bit? So the challenge for development in Annapolis, and this speaks to the comment we heard earlier from one of the commissioners, is what do you do with the cars? So we did 3 different things with the cars. For the townhouses, we parked them either in driveways or under the buildings. The majority are on the first floor, and you'll see those plans in a minute. We looked at a larger parking structure, but I think once you get over 2 stories, it feels like a parking garage. And I think the 1 story with the rooftop parking is a much more elegant solution where it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming the adjacent development.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't go full on Texas donut.
Yeah, one thing on the parking garage, it was a very particular item that the community did not want. There was a lot of safety concerns about having a multi-story closed garage, and so we heard those concerns and went back to the drawing board and came up with, a parking deck. So it really is open on all sides. It'll be well lit and as secure as a parking structure can be.
So I think if you are going to do any solar, above the roof a la Hillman that seems to be the way to go.
Yeah,
Plus keep the heat off the sun pavement too.
Yeah, there's 1 at grade and 1 above.
Yeah,
Right. So it's structured parking. It's just that it's
2 levels.
2 levels.
That's correct. That's correct. And the idea here was we saw garages like this on the Eastern Shore, and we were kind of touring around and felt like the ones we saw there were just a little bit more welcoming, if you will. And you can get green elements on the roof that are visible from the public way down low. So, and it doesn't, I don't feel like I live across from a parking garage because there's green all around it, which we think is helpful. You want to go to the next one for me? There we go. So here's a shot between the building and the garage. So this is the scale we're talking about. And we put some structured elements at the stair towers of the garage on the corners. And we think that kind of a trellis type element, although the rain won't go through that, there'll be a false roof in there. But the idea is to keep it light and airy and open. And so, and the scale as it relates to the 3 stories of the corner building, we think works well. Next one. Yeah, so and then this is from the public way as we go down Forest Drive, I believe, and I think I have that right. But here you can see where that grade goes from the corner and drops down pretty quick. And so we've created this interstitial space between the building and the roadway that acts as, it really does 3 different things. The upper terrace opens the building to the space within. So there's a high terrace that you could have dining or whatever you wanted to. And then there's this step element, which Jordan will talk about, that combines some other uses, which will include gathering space and stormwater elements and plantings. So we think this is a nice way to keep from getting a real tall building sitting on the corner and providing kind of this will be a unique sense of place, we think.
Quieter off the street too.
We think so.
It'll be quieter, up
Let's slide
10
over
feet.
to the side. We already saw that one, okay. So I think that covers those.
Question about, are you going to talk about what's in the parking under the first floor? Is it just, it's all just stalls?
No,
Okay.
I was going to go back to that, but you can barely see it here. Can you zoom in there? So if you go to like Amsterdam, you'll see that in these parking decks, there's a lot of storage under there for bikes.
Yeah, you
I've
knew
got-
what I was getting at.
Yeah. So I've got room for at least 40 to 50 bikes down there. And again, we think that if the city continues in the path we're all hoping it does, that will start to take a higher place in the pecking order of transportation. So we're thinking ahead and think it's a really good spot to do that. So we've given up some parking, but we can meet the requirements, and and I think that's a nice way to use that space.
Yeah, even having, fully enclosed locker kind of things would be nice too, so.
Yeah, we think that there's an
Provides more
opportunity to do
safety.
that either there or under the building in the lower
Yeah.
level, depending on where people want to do that stuff. But, even wash stations and stuff are all stuff we're going to be
Yeah, I think
taking a close
especially
look
because
at.
the units are fairly small, not going to have room to bring a bike up.
Yeah, no one wants to bring their bike to 700 feet.
Yeah.
So let's go to our next ones. So here, this is an interesting slide to me because this shows the corner where the commercial building and the entry sit next to the first row of townhouses. And so we changed the mix of materials to go more towards the townhouse type imagery that we're used to seeing in some of the more successful ones in Annapolis and elsewhere. Again, these will be more vertical because they're townhouses. One of the things we were asked to do is to reduce the size of the upper floor, so we made it only half the size of the unit above. So there'll be a bedroom up there and then a walkout to on a rooftop deck, and we've seen that in other places in Annapolis. It's been successful. This isn't my favorite slide because it needs more development, but it gives you a sense of the scale of it. These are 3-story units with a cap on top. There's parking underneath. And then you start to develop these street elements are not dissimilar from what we have on West Street that's been so successful today, with the exception of the fact that they're set back from the street quite a bit because they're not quite as hard up against the sidewalk. And I think that works better in this location. This one really gives you a better sense of the overall kind of mix of what's happening there. You've got a lot of green space. Got the parking elements under the towns. You've got the undulating facades with different materials for each one. So I'm pretty excited about how that's coming together. And then finally, in the distance, you can see the corner building which anchors the property.
What's the square footage of the townhouses?
The townhouses are a bit larger. I think they're set up as 3 bedrooms with the parking inside. I'm going to say, let's see. I'm not sure I can answer that question without making it up, so maybe I should tell you that next time we're together.
And will they, what are they, 4 stories? So will they stand taller than the mixed-use building?
They're the same height. They're the same height. It still has that setback in the front. You want to go to the plans for the town so we can show you, and then you can make a better guess. There's floor plans for the towns in the set. Yeah, there's the height. Again, not dissimilar from what we see downtown, but I think I have a floor plan in here too. Yeah, oh yeah, so, yeah, keep going up. Great. So here's your main, you can actually go up one more slide. There you go. So that's the one I want, yeah. So here you can see on the ground level, there's parking for 2 cars. You come into the vestibule space. There's a den on the first floor, and then a stairway that takes you up. And you can see one of the things that came up in our prior meetings in that image is we eliminated the runs of 9 and 10 units and went to runs of 4 and 5 and created pedestrian walkways between them to green them up a little bit. I think that was Commissioner Waldman's suggestion.
These look to be at like 2,200 square feet, not including the garage space.
That sounds about right. And then the main floor here, you can see you come up and there's open living, dining and kitchen space. And then finally and balconies on the street side. And then finally there's 2 other floors on the next sheet. Yeah, so here you can see the bedroom level with 2 bedrooms, then finally a bedroom or den on the upper floor with a balcony space to create some outdoor space for the townhouses, which again, this is all stuff that's been tried and true. So if we go to the imagery that's just below these in the slide deck, there are places in this special mixed plan development where the front of the unit does not face a roadway. It faces that kind of our green area that goes through the center that we were talking about, that Wayne described to you. And so working with Mr. Smith, we decided that we would try and use those to create another sense of place there with these combination boardwalk and concrete walkways that'll look into that space. So while it doesn't front a traditional street, we think it creates a nice, that's part of the walkways that you'll see that Mr. Crabtree will talk about. Next one. And I'm done, I'm almost done, but I just want to hit through a couple of these. Do I have any more of those in there? Yeah, that's just an ancillary image. I think that kind of gives you an idea, but I thought I had a few in here that showed like some of the other precedent images in there. Can you see that on your deck? Yeah. Keep going. They're probably in a different area. They're in your handouts, but you'll see, what we were basing these on again are some of the products we've seen like on West Street. We think a lot of that stuff starts to work really well. They seem to be, the market seems to enjoy those, and we think the scale of them is appropriate to provide additional housing. So is it appropriate for this area? We think so. Is it compatible? We think so. Does it provide compliance with some of the requirements for special mixed plan development in terms of scale, mass, proportion? Yes, the answer is yes, that we worked hard with city staff to come up with solutions that meet all of those requirements that are detailed in the staff report that the city's provided for you. So I think that's everything, unless you wanted to ask me more specific questions.
I think that's it, but one thing, that the different materials, and we're showing some brick, but what are some of the other materials that we're going to be using?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like the brick because it's Annapolis, right? So it's hard to get away from that in my mind. But I also like the more contemporary nature of the panelized assemblies. So the windows are a little bit larger than what you would see traditionally. So there's a lot of glazing. On the back side, it'll be like a cementitious siding that's panelized, and those are assemblies that are available from several manufacturers. And then there's a metal component that is used for the handrails, for the balconies, and for the window frames. So the combination of those three things, I think, starts to lend itself with traditional reference with contemporary components.
Okay, great. And in your professional opinion, the project incorporates a high-quality architectural design and meets all of the code standards?
We believe that it does, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any questions for Leo?
Great.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stick around. Okay, I'm going to have Mr. Crabtree, Jordan Crabtree, come on down. Ready? Let's see what page you're on. Hello. Just go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
So I'm Jordan Locke Crabtree. Our office is 98 Edgewood Avenue, Annapolis, Maryland.
And your experience, landscape architect, handling all kinds of projects in the city of Annapolis?
Yeah, we work in the city of Annapolis. I've been working here for 12 years. We've also worked on urban redevelopment internationally and across the country, from Chile to DC, and a lot in Annapolis as well.
And you're familiar with all of the code requirements?
I am.
I think I mentioned this in my opening. Jordan was involved in our presentation to all of you back in September of 22, and we showed you a lot of the existing invasives, and we pulled an image from that presentation, and I'll just let Jordan elaborate on it, but it's in your, oh, I lost it. It's in your supplement that I handed out earlier, but here it is.
Yes, this was the compilation of all of our studies we had done, called at our conceptual level. So we were looking at the whole site, kind of every square foot, and looking at different things like impervious surface, where there's compacted soil, for whatever the reason may be, kind of non-contributing lawn. The kudzu infestation was large enough that it warranted its own designation, and then the invasive forest. And along with, we had a color grading scale similar to what you guys just saw on the tree report. We had some smaller trees included as well.
Did you say invasive trees or invasive species?
Invasive species, yeah. I mean, there are invasive trees on the site as well.
Okay.
But so kind of the way that you see this all together, the kudzu, everything's blending a little bit in this image, but the red, so these are the invasive species. The area that looks like lawn to page north, that's actually just a kudzu field where it's taken over the trees. And then there's now just kind of totem poles of what was a tree. And that's kind of where the forest would be headed if something doesn't happen. Within the forest, Mike Lasco can speak a little bit more specifically, but words have been used to describe it as a trash forest, a non-contributing forest, a dead forest. So there's really no native, natural forest cover or ground forest cover. And so invasives are taking off, non-contributing species are taking off, which really on the larger scale leads to, not native, not happy animals, bugs, all the things that kind of start to build. And so really this entire site sadly is kind of dead in that way. We're not able to, there's still squirrels and animals, but really there's nothing to create the natural environment that we would hope for. And given its location, being this kind of headwater site and where the water's flowing, it really can be a point change source, we think.
It can be what?
Kind of a point change source. Like right now, it's almost this negative. We've got this kudzu valley that could just keep going. They could just take over. And it's not just this site, it's other sites that have it. But we're hoping to kind of reverse that and create a native site that can then start to spread out throughout the contributing neighboring sites.
And I would say this is great to talk about right now because I think, when we talk about the maintenance program, we're going to have to talk about how to maintain what you're trying to deliver here, which is going to be a beautiful site. So the invasive species maintenance will be important. And right now we're seeing a lot of developments don't have that. And that's why they're getting overrun with invasives. So.
Yeah, and I'm excited we'll get into this a little later, but kind of the meadow system, it seems like a small piece of the set that you guys were able to review. It's actually probably one of the biggest pieces environmentally of the site. So we're seeding a meadow over 2.5 acres, and that really is much more a pilot for change than anything else on the site. And that comes with, if you read through the notes carefully, there's a seeding process over 2 years. There's a maintenance program that kind of works out. And a lot of it just starts with planting and seeding it properly, but the first couple of years of maintenance makes all the difference.
And would you be doing that maintenance or your firm?
We would be providing the specs, the performance specs that would oversee it. And we've done this in countless times in the area, in the region in Maryland, but in Mississippi, California, we work with a seed manufacturer, Ernst out of Pennsylvania. And so we'd actually create, kind of jumping ahead, but this custom seed mix of like 50 species that would be native, that would bloom in the right time, perennially, biannually, to kind of keep the ground stabilized as there are a lot of steep slopes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the open spaces, some of the other landscape elements, the buffers we've talked about, and then the community amenities.
Yeah, I was thinking we could start from the store market area and kind of working out to the forest. So, we got to see a lot of images with Leo's team from the Forest Drive side. We're really trying to engage the street and kind of this idea of bringing the community in the same way that we like to connect architecture out to the exterior, to the garden. We really want to make people feel welcome to come into the site. And that's a lot of the reason we all came up with this terrace design down to forest where there's, one of the questions was, will people feel comfortable sitting there? And we've created this kind of nesting of trees. There's not a row of trees. They're somewhat randomized across it. There's planters that come up to kind of create a sense of enclosure when you're there. It would be a place where people could be walking by from the community, stop, have a cell phone call, choose to walk up into the site, or feel like they're just kind of passing by. We've also used it as a place to work in handicap ramps in a way that just feels more natural, aesthetically kind of blends in with the site. And environmentally, we're dealing with stormwater. We're connecting tree wells all throughout there. So there's a lot of things happening. And Leo touched on, up at the food court, and market, you could walk out, have this great place. There's this then second layer where you can come down and rest. People might have a laptop and work there. So kind of multi.
Can you point to everything you're talking about?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it's kind of page north, it's like a wedge up there.
So that's facing Forest Drive. So you come from the food court, you go outside. Got it.
Yeah. And so there's this whole, and what we were working to is that's where a lot of the grade change is. That's probably the steepest change that's felt. And so we're kind of softening that by a couple staircases coming up and a few gathering areas within it. And then,
Real quick, can you go back
Yeah.
real quick? Can you explain, sorry, I brought a pointer here. What's the grade part right here?
yeah, so then switching to the interior of that, what we worked with, and we had a lot of conversations about the best way to do this. So there's planted areas, the ones that are coming out gray, the parking. The idea is to pave them, that they're permeable, but then also that this area within the parking, you know, if it's just the Page North end, that if there's an event or a market on Sundays or a small concert, that the road can kind of be closed off there. And there could be an event that can happen, you know, not dissimilar to what's happened at the Market House. And so some of the paving difference, as well as being environmentally for permeability, it's also a place to kind of demarcate, you know, that maybe it's just those stalls that are switched over on the weekends so kids can run a little bit more freely next to there.
And then one more with this image here. So in the top of the parking area, the second elevation, is that being designed in a way that maybe it can be used in certain events as well?
It could be. It would be hard to, in the sense, because it's cascading down and away from the building. So, but I mean, there's a deck you can
This
see.
part right here?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were showing the other direction.
Yeah, so like this can be repurposed, which I love.
Yeah.
Can this also be repurposed for events as well?
I mean, it's a second floor of a parking deck, maybe, but it'd be tough.
Okay. I was just interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that it's flexible, it's all open, and we have planting that we've put up there. So there's flexibility.
Clearly, Gavin hasn't seen this, right?
And then going around to Old Solomon's, you know, we've created pretty generous walkways. We're going kind of all of the areas, we're going above and beyond on the distances so that, you know, if cyclists are getting off their bikes, we have various areas of bike racks for people who are just coming quickly and aren't going to park under the garage. And then giving generous enough space to be able to walk the bikes on the site. And you can see all of those street trees that are wrapping around, you know, those are interconnected planting beds. So we're giving them their best chance, much more than just these kind of small bays. And so some of the design is aesthetic, that we have these flowing paths and flowing planting beds, but it's also very practical as well in that sense.
Are those street trees set back a little bit from the power lines? Because there are power lines on both streets. So are the ones on Old Solomon's Island set back enough that they're not going to grow up into the power lines? Or?
Yeah, and you can see like towards the corner how we really pulled those trees back in, and so that's part of that accommodation.
Is that dotted line the power line, or maybe it's the property line?
That's the darker bold one is the power line, or sorry, is the property line, but it is, to my best knowledge, close to there.
Okay.
Looking at this.
Not sure if it's on here or not.
And you can see.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the power lines are.
Yeah. And then if we move back closer to kind of some of the recreation areas, going into the townhomes, we've created a lot of these nooks. So there's this bordering area where there's an open lawn, you know, kind of could be a dog run. Most people would think of it as that. Easily accessible to this cluster of townhomes. But we've nestled a lot of these into the homes throughout the site, and then going over towards the edge of the forest is where we really wanted to bring people to gather, whether they're from the townhomes or they're just going on a walk from the retail. So these kind of biomorphic shaped lawns, as we call it, they're actually following the grade. So we're kind of working with the slopes and getting over and staying out of the steep slopes, but getting people as close as possible to look over into the forest. Stephen and I specifically have hiked into there a few times, and it is rather precarious, but when you get to these like flat spots, you really look into the canopy and you kind of have a dramatic view down into the ravine. And so giving that opportunity, you can see the matrix of the trees, the reforestation that we're working into the existing trees. So getting to reestablish that. And so these become opportunities. Right now we're showing them as open space. So that's a place for, we kind of call it passive recreation. You know, we haven't gotten into programming as far as like something as specific as play equipment, but there's more than enough space for those here. And those hug this trail. And as we go up on the site, page north, you can see as the trail winds around, we chose to take the path that goes over towards the other townhomes due to the severe grade. So we had to go all the way up, and also kind of safety security wise, you can see all the lights that are along it, but we're hugging the most gentle grade for people to walk across, go back and forth, closer to some of the higher activity areas near the retail. And over in these townhomes, there's a few pocket lawns kind of nestled in the back. And again, also looking over into the forest. And once this is all cleaned up and reestablished, there really will be kind of filtered views across the ravine. And they'll get blocked as the trees grow up and then come back again in the future. And so that's kind of, there's, right now we've programmed it in the way that there's a lot of opportunity for, could be things such as boulders and logs being placed in careful ways, but also for play equipment to come along.
Showed us before.
Yeah, and so here's a little bit more detailed version of what we're imagining for the Forest Drive. Nestling in the handicap ramp midway, having these intentional stairways to walk up, but then the rest of the stairs being a full 12 inches and 18 inches in area where they become seating as well. And we're hoping, there's been a lot of success in traffic slowing by having people facing and sitting closer. And so also the hope is it achieves that and makes people feel connected in the community.
Is there currently a bike lane right there where you're showing it?
There's not a formal bike lane at all. There actually is enough space, but.
So I'm just curious, is that are you proposing that bike lane?
It came up in various meetings.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a complete street, the bike lane. Yep.
Pretty dangerous area.
Well,
I think
I ride through there all the time.
I know one person who would do it.
I ride there all the time and I feel completely safe.
It's sort of nice to have it there just as kind of window dressing, and it's more of a placeholder because it doesn't really connect to anything.
Yeah.
And that's
Not yet.
so that's another story for another time, but the county has a lot of work to do on the other side of Old Solomon's Island Road. But anyway, it doesn't hurt to have it there. It certainly narrows the street a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and a good placeholder for.
And the hope is really we hope that, I'm a cyclist, so my hope is that artery kind of connects into the more industrial design district, off Chinquapin. Once that happens and then you're able to get downtown and you've really made the connections.
With that previous view, how wide is that sidewalk?
At the road's edge,
Yeah, the road's edge.
we had nothing less. This is a little skewed graphically. We did have to widen it a little bit in the end. So there's always whatever the required, I think it was 6 or 7 feet we had.
Well,
think
5
it's
feet
5
is
feet.
ADA.
So we went a little
5
bit
feet.
above it at the pinch
Four is the
points.
minimum.
And then, so there's no grass buffer or any kind of way for people to feel a little bit more comfortable with cars speeding next to them there?
We didn't have any with the way the slope is that it works there.
Got it.
And hoping that the bike lane would kind of also be a additional buffer from the vehicles.
Yeah, any way that we can, as Alex said, optical narrowing as well with a bike lane or something to help tell people to slow down in that area. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's good on that. You got the lighting detail?
Is Forest Drive there a city street? Or is it?
It's a mix. I think that Mr. Meekins can probably answer that better.
Or is it county?
That's a very good question. Do you know off the top of your head? It could actually even be a state road.
I don't think it doesn't have a number on it.
I think Old Solomon's is state.
Old Solomon.
Old Sol.
Yep, and then Forest up to right in front of our project is county, and then right past us is the city, going into the city.
Right.
Yeah. So one thing we wanted to make sure to talk about, the paths became really important to us. I know we've touched on this a little bit. We've kept them at a grade. We did a ton of grading studies amongst the team, but keeping it so that people could comfortably walk across the site through these open areas into the retail, across the ravine over into the other townhomes. And so we haven't shown any like programmatic running trail, but to do a loop that doesn't involve any figure eights or any looping back, like there's a half-mile loop that kind of naturally occurs here. And so the hope would be we kind of, there could be that for the residents that are there or anyone that's coming to meet up and just do a quick jog with adequate markings and measurement on that.
And one of the things we've talked about is, you've probably seen this at parks and things like that, where they have the placard that shows the map, you are here, and then here's the trail. Putting something like that together, and if you walk it and come back, you have a mile, go around twice, and if you want to do a walking event on the weekend, some charity event, we've got a safe trail already built in, which again, I think is pretty unique, and there probably aren't many other projects in the city, if any, that have delivered something like this.
And we
I have a quick question. I don't have my own pointer. Well, I'll just go like this. So you can read that.
So that's part of that Allen Drive connection. So
Okay.
we are providing a pedestrian connection, but that requires permission. The connection would ultimately happen, and correct me if I'm wrong, off.
Yeah, so it says that where the stairs are gray, where that line is, that's our property line. So we can promise you tonight we can build that, but anything beyond that, we're going to need an easement from the owners of the Allen
And how's it
apartments.
going since it's been a few years and you were
Yeah,
talking about it a few years ago?
Yep, I think it's in the works, but,
So-
And were
private
they,
agreement, and hopefully,
were they sort of not interested in making that a vehicular connection to Allen Street?
well, the topography was prohibitive there.
No. So you can't really connect those two? There's just too much grade change
Correct.
there?
For a car, but you were talking about a trail.
Correct, yeah, where that trail connects. I think that ultimately, we'll come to some agreement. But, we're just trying to get to our property line. If they want to build beyond that on their property, that's.
So you're not working with them right now. I know when we talked at our work session, that was one of the major things we talked about, is trying to come together with that neighbor to make sure that connectivity happened. And I guess what you're saying.
We've had some dialogue, nothing extensive.
dialogue, got it.
Yeah, I mean, we've, again, gone back and forth, but we will continue those conversations, especially when we get to the grading stage.
And so we really tied together the web of, connecting here, connecting to the street Forest Drive to head downtown, and then connecting to the neighborhood. I'm blanking on the first name, but the farm neighborhood. So all of and they have a quote unquote lawn trail that goes behind down to the stormwater area. So all of those points really are connected. And so our half-mile loop really could be extended a lot further.
Are there any paths in Neal Farms like that, or?
They have like
It's been
a
a while since I
lawn.
looked at
There's
that.
like a lawn around. You go around the buildings, and you can tell people walk it quite often.
There are some packed mulch trails in the wooded area, but we walked that. It's probably been a year or so. So
Yeah.
they're there.
Yeah. So
No,
the
it would be nice if eventually, all of these communities kind of knit together as one, and it's not this development, that development, that they all just sort of seem like one. Would be nice goal to achieve.
Yeah, and you can see so page bottom right, that is the connection to where, if we were walking that, if this existed, we'd walk off of that trail and walk down through the lawn. We obviously can't build off of there, but that heads right to their mulch trail that Stephen was just describing. So that's kind of our target, is that you would just flow from there. You walked along the top of the hill, and there's actually dips down into the forest and the ravine at a rather steep grade, but it does. And
Talk about lighting.
so lighting, we provide, safe lights across the whole site. So more traditional raised lighting throughout all the parking areas. So both exterior along the streets and then interior as well for all the housing. And then the specific ones that we've provided smaller, so they're kind of the smaller scale. So you can see here, same style, just bringing it down in scale for the paths along the forest. And obviously, just a trail going through the woods at night, we really want that to be a safe point, whoever's choosing to walk there.
Okay, let's talk about plantings, actual species, where, how many, and maybe a little more detail on the street trees.
Yeah. So we pulled some calculations that would be part of the, formal process later, but just to kind of go back on some of the existing site statistics. So we have about 44% of the site existing that is quote unquote forested. And as we've looked at it, really it's a non-contributing forest. Like maybe you would actually count 20% of that as an active forest. And so
Quick question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What is there, I was thinking about the Forest Conservation Act, and I don't remember any terminology that says non-contributing forest. Is that your own term, or is that
It's actually the city has used it very often throughout the year. So like, let's say you had a stand of a steep slope along the creek that was a black locust, it's not really contributing to the overall forest character. They grew there because no one dealt with it for years.
Right, so those are trees that are non-native and that may have invasive species. So you're just saying non-contributing, but you're not saying that you're not counting them towards the forest conservation calculations.
Yeah, we've calculated everything that we needed to in those. Yeah, non-conforming. It's just like
You're not like exempting them and saying we don't like those trees, we're not going to count them.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but they're not helping the environment or really anyone. And so we really want, as we said before, kind of reverse this direction. And so what we've proposed with all of these trees, if we go by the calculations of the 20-year diameter calculation, which is kind of the vision for Annapolis, kind of falling into that, increasing our forest cover as a city, we would be up to like 86% by one calculation, and by another about 126%. So we have more than, like, for sure more than required amount of trees, but we're really going above and beyond to kind of go into the forest, reestablish the forest that's there, and then bringing the street trees around the buildings themselves. And not that the architecture needs softened or the height brought down in any way, because as we've discussed, it's very much kind of on the proper scale for where it is. But these trees that are falling along Old Solomon's in clusters and on forest in kind of a skewed way, they really do help to kind of soften the appearance of the built form to the tree. And so overall, just kind of recap on that, we have like a 4.5 acre existing forest. We're proposing what'll turn into, with these street trees and everything, almost 9 acres of forest cover across the site. And, the talking to the planting design, there were some questions. We're really going for this planting massing. Obviously, we want aesthetic beauty where these people live. So it's lush plantings. Some are native, some are non-native. But I think we're at like 80% native coverage on these around the buildings themselves. We're grouping these trees together to create shade. Just a reminder, like, we're reclaiming this landscape that essentially has a 0% biodiversity value. And then we already touched on this, the meadow a little bit, but I'm very excited about this idea of the meadow kind of coming into this ravine. And so you can see kind of the olive green to the right of this image is kind of, we're not necessarily clearing that. It's probably the healthiest area of the forest coming into there, but the rest of it is where there's so many trees coming out. The kudzu is like so rampant that it's going to leave bare ground when we're done. So we have to approach that, and it's really a great opportunity that we establish this new forest ground cover. 30 years down the road, there's going to be a healthy stand of trees, and so that whole planting typology is going to change, but this will help establish it for that time being.
Where's the meadow area you're talking about?
So if you can see, pretty much everything except for that olive drab green on the right is all getting seeded meadow. It's over 2.5 acres in plan view, so really felt on the site it's about 3.5 acres given the slope. And so that gets seeded in a way that within the first growing season, it's fully covered, and then gets cut back about once a year and comes back, and we get seeded again the second year. And so,
what are you talking about for ground cover there, where you're going to be taking out the invasives? What kind of ground cover?
Yeah, so the meadow mix, the way it works is the process we've done before is we typically walk the site. We've done this about 5 times, and we'll gather any existing native species that we find naturally growing there, because it's a great sign. Like, this is the right solar exposure, this is the right soil, what's actually happening. We take those. On this site, it's really hard because
I thought you were just saying it's dead because it's
It's
called
dead.
kudzu. So you're going to have to start from.
So what we do is we work with Ernst. We've already established a lot of meadow mixes for this region. And so we'll start with a base native mix. Some of this is going to be shaded, some isn't. So we do a mixture that allows for certain species. Say there's 10 species that'll proliferate in shade, and there's 20 that'll proliferate in full sun. And then there's maybe 30 that do kind of catch that in between area. And so all of those they get mixed. We get this actual custom seed mix, and then they get seeded across the site. And within the growing season of that, whatever kind of like survival of the fittest, whatever is growing naturally the best in that area comes up. And there'll be some that'll just be ground cover to get everything established and to stop erosion. It's really the best way to keep erosion at bay.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how are you going to get the invasives off the steep slopes without causing more erosion? What's the plan there?
We haven't gotten that far in the construction specs on that, but it'll be mostly hand removal of it. We did explore goat removal early in the process. There's
Still
an option.
There's actually there's a legitimate process of goat removal. You let goats eat everything on the site, and they naturally fertilize the site and clear it for you.
Oh, goat.
Goat.
Oh, eco goats. Oh, yeah, I'm familiar
Yeah,
with that.
you're familiar.
They
Okay,
don't like kudzu, so you're not. Yeah.
Yeah, they could do the woods. So it'll be careful. It'll have to be careful. I mean, it's very steep. And
So when you clear the trees, right, and you're putting in new trees, there's still going to be a good amount of time before the roots really take hold, right? And then, so what's the process to keep erosion from occurring between the process of tearing or digging up the current trees versus the time it takes for the roots to take hold?
yeah, so we've done it in a couple ways. We've done it where you clear in segments. So we clear an area that's manageable, and they literally are like, hey, it's going to rain. We're projecting rain in 5 days, so we're going to clear this amount of area this week, seed it. And then we've done it in others where they take a more broad scope and they clear the entire section, and then, straw, whatever we need to do, putting Curl-X and different things. And we've used Hydro Seed where we mix the seed with a sticky substance, and it gets actually sprayed onto the slope. We found success in both ways. So it'll depend on timing and the contractor and familiarity with how they do it.
Are you familiar with Chesapeake Bay landscape professional designation here in Anne Arundel County?
I am a little, but not to a full
Those are
extent.
people that are trained to deal with exactly these kind of issues because they're all related to Chesapeake Bay. And so CBLP trained and certified folks are probably the best people to do this. And I would recommend highly trying to coordinate with them because I think you're going to get the best results.
That's great. Thank you. And the only other thing I would say on the trees, it's shown in some of the details, which are sometimes harder to get into, but all the trees that are around the building, the main retail apartments, those are all getting connected by tree wells. So they're not small islands of balled up roots. So they're able to connect to one another and have a much broader availability of soil.
And I know silvacells were mentioned, but are you committed to using silvacells, especially in the areas where you needed to have the roots be able to spread out and not pull up the sidewalks?
Yeah, there's both. So we have decking that connects some of it that just allows the soil to kind of go between them. We kind of use a whole broad range. And so silvacells is one option that can be used. There's so many products now. We love silvacells. We love Jim Urban, who's been here for years. But there's a lot of options we can use. We left it open.
Thank you. And just generally, from an overview standpoint, can you confirm that the project's high-quality landscape design and is in compliance with all of the code standards?
We can. Yeah, and I would say, the applicant's really using, it's not like we're just throwing high-end materials at this, but really carefully thinking about the materials, whether it's bluestone or how concrete's used, the wood decking that kind of really matches the city character and wants to blend in. And we're doing that in a way that just has high aesthetic value and hopefully really connected into the rest of the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Stephen, it's getting kind of late, so what do you have left now? The forest conservation?
Yep, we have Mr. Klobasco is going to go over FSD, and then Mr. Harrison will.
I was going to suggest we save that for the next meeting. And,
And that would be great, because then we could have the worksheet, the updated worksheet
okay,
from our,
that way we can allow for the citizen comment.
Yeah, the forest conservation thing starts to get into sort of like technical code stuff that maybe going to bore most of the public. It's important, no question, but I think it's important that we not get too late before, to let people have a chance to give public comment.
July 11th. 11th.
So, arborist will not be here on the 11th, and he's here now. We've waited 7 years. With all due respect, I'd really like to get through the first round of questions. If there's follow-up, I can have someone else come in his place, but I'd like to, at least get through his initial testimony.
Well, how about if we do some public comment first, and we can get back to that, because these folks have been patiently here for a couple hours, and how about if we get back to that?
Okay.
I mean, let's, actually, I know this is a little out of order here, but if folks in the audience could raise it, anybody who wants to give testimony, just so maybe we can get a sense of who wants to, has comments. So we get 3, 4, 5 people. Yeah, I think that's worth doing that. And then we'll come back and hear from Mr. Klobasco after that. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
So I think you have to formally open the public hearing. I think you just have to formally open the public hearing.
All right, anybody who'd like to speak, come on up.
Good evening to everyone. Lisa Wilson. I'm at 601 Oaklawn Avenue, and I'm also speaking on my father's estate, which is 2102 Forest Drive, which is directly across the street from this property. I have mixed feelings on this, and Mr. Hyde is aware. I have mixed feelings on this property. Do I want it? Yes and no. Okay, so I'm just gonna speak what I have to say. So part of Parole Place is being built on land that was purchased by my great-grandparents about 1933. Due to laziness and greed, Mr. Hyatt was able to purchase the property from my family. Something that was very upsetting to my late father, who was an honest man, not a rich man. I must be honest and say, I always prayed that this would not be built while he was alive. My father passed away October 18th, 2023. My father often spoke about how he used to pick blackberries with his grandmother and sell them so that they can buy the property. After the war, the family moved to Annapolis from South River on Christmas Eve and moved into the home that I occupy right now. As time went on, different members of the family got a partial of the property. My great uncle purchased his property from his father, and his property is part of Parole Place now. He built his home with his own hands. He was a bricklayer, and he was a good one. The property behind his was vacant for a while, but still owned by the family. Fast forward to about 2012, 2023. That's when the greed and the laziness kicked in. The family no longer had possession of this property. This is where the trouble started. 3 vacant homes on what is now Parole Place. I'm just gonna give you a few highlights of everything that's happened. 3 a.m., my husband and I are on our way to Columbus, Ohio for Christmas. People walking through my uncle's house with flashlights, stealing copper. homeless people entering my great uncle's home from the back side, not the front side. We did see a few people go in and out the front door. This resulted in Mr. Hyatt having about 12 plus cases of trespassing. One Thursday evening, someone just sets a bonfire in Alderwoman Hoyle's driveway, just out of the blue. We call 911. Working from home, taking care of my dad, teenagers in and out of Alderwoman Hoyle's home. Boys, one girl, 911 immediately. Sunday afternoon in the fall, my husband's outside smoking a cigar, smoke coming out the chimney of Alderwoman Hoyle's home. Homeless person in there built a fire. Okay. We complained to Mr. Hyde, he had the houses boarded up. One morning on my walk, the houses are boarded up now. Side window open. Let Mr. Hyde know there's a side window open. He had that taken care of. One Sunday afternoon, as I was cooking my Sunday dinner, a car pulls into Alderwoman Hoyle's driveway. A gentleman gets out, gets in the back seat. I call the police. He's not supposed to be over there. I'm going to speak for Mr. Hyatt and his son. They have 12 no trespassing signs over there that I can see from my house. Okay, I call 911, not supposed to be there. Gentleman gets out of the car, gets in the back seat. Call the police, they come, knock on the window, he gets out, he doesn't have any clothes on. I'm gonna let you all figure out the rest, and it wasn't a woman he was with. One spring morning, about 4 a.m., the windows are open, because it's spring. We smell smoke. What happens? They set the garage on fire. The home, they come down. Mr. Hyatt called me, Lisa, we have to tear him down. Broke my heart, but I understood why. I always loved the design of my uncle's house, and my uncle had a beautiful stone fireplace. As I said, he did masonry work. Thank you, Mr. Hyatt, for letting me know I did get some of those stones from his fireplace. But one thing they forgot to tear down was the small camper that was on my cousin Charles' property. Homeless man took over the property and the trailer. I know Mr. Hyatt had to have at least 5 dump trucks of trash. My husband had a drone. He took a picture. I sent it to Mr. Hyatt. That's what happened. One random evening, it's getting chilly. Some men built a fire that got out of hand. We called 911. They come, they put it out. They let the men go. Why do you let them go? They didn't break any laws. They set the woods on fire, but they didn't break any laws. For the last 2 years, maybe a little more, men have been gathering at the edge of the woods, drinking, which has led to fighting. Sometimes fighting in the middle of Forest Drive, hitting each other with sticks, pulling knives on one another. There's been numerous medical calls for men getting sick, probably really intoxicated, loitering all over the property. Mr. Watkins across the street, he was going over to pick up trash, but it just got to be too much. Now, we have men and women of all races living in the woods. They're still in the woods, in and out. They had blue tarps with tents. We have men urinating. Mr. and Mrs. Watkins sitting in their dining room table, and what do they see? Men urinating. We don't want it, we don't like it, we understand change, but this property has been a nuisance. Mr. Hyatt is aware. I will shoot him an email. He does reply, he does take care of it, but it's a nuisance. So I don't know how you guys are gonna go with this, but something needs to be done with this property. I don't know if you can pull the police record to see what's going on. It's just like all the time, it's a nuisance. It's not very becoming to the neighborhood, and we just wanted to stop. And Mr. Hyde, I'm not sure if you remember, we've been dealing with this since Mr. Alton was alive. You remember that? Way back in probably late 80s, early 90s, when we had to come down here and sit at this table to talk about these homeless people on the property. So I'm glad that if this does go through, that my father's not here to see it.
Thank you very much.
There's a speaker sign-up sheet here, so if you'd like to be part of the record and receive information as this case proceeds through the approval process, it'd be helpful to sign up on this sheet before you speak.
Hello. Hello. We are residents of Neal Farm, so we have dual questions. I'm on the board for the HOA for Neal Farm. So we had some
I'm
questions.
sorry, could you just state your name?
Yes, my name
for the
is
record?
Shonda, S-H-O-N-D-A. Last name is Davis Hobbs. I would be James Walker Place, adjacent to where the property is coming. So I looked at your plans and I had some questions about on our street. We have fire lanes because to make sure that the fire trucks can get through. I noticed that for the townhomes, the back of the alleyway would face my home. So one question would be, how are they going to enforce them not parking behind the garages? Because if they do, that would be a fire violation. And also, would there be, I guess, made into, like, for our property, we're not allowed to park behind our garages. That is a no-no. And for the trash cans, I had a concern because if the neighbor directly across from me decides to put their trash out, normally during the summer, we have issues with trash. So I do not want to see rodents by my house. I also have the privilege of being on the grounds committee, and I heard the information about the trails. We, the HOA, we take care of that trail, and I think I heard the gentleman say that it has not been walked in a year. That's not so. We just did a cleanup through that trail, and we, as the homeowners, we pay for that. So we pay for that. We pay for that. We pay the landscaper to for the mulch and for that trail, and we have a cleanup, I think like every 6 months, where we go out and clean. We actually went out maybe like last month and did a clean. We walk through and take out debris. So that comes out of our HOA dues as well as our pockets. So I had a concern about that. I think I heard the gentleman say that it backs up to our trail and they would just attach on. So would they be assisting, or how would that be working? So I did have a question about that as well.
I think generally the way those work is it's sort of reciprocal, that
Right.
each neighborhood could use each trail and everybody pays for their own piece of it. kind of thing.
Okay. Also, because we are considered like a private street, we also pay for snow removal. Our streets are supposed to be maintained by city, but city never comes to plow that, so we end up having to pay for that. One of my questions, since the demographic would change in that area, would that mean that they would be willing to, the city would take that cost back over now instead of us having that in our snow removal? So,
Well, I mean, if it's a public street, they should be, if Neal Farms are public streets, they should be plowing those.
in the 5 years I've been, they have never come.
I mean, that's, whether they do or not, I mean, that's not really our
Exactly.
purview. That's something to deal with Public Works. But, you know, the same would apply to this development too. If it's a public street, city maintains that, including snow removal.
So I'm John Graham. I'm at 608 James Walker Place. But you bring up a great point. So, yeah, the city's not maintaining the street. They don't plow the street. It's the city street, and we pay for it. So there's been a tremendous amount of time dedicated tonight to landscaping and forestation and plantings. And I think this lady up here had brought up this point a couple times. Once all that's installed, then it gets turned over to a community association with a whole bunch of hieroglyphics on how it's supposed to be maintained. And they're just volunteers. And we have to pay for this out of our pocket, our association dues. I mean, we've already jacked up our dues, increased them. So once a developer's off the bond, this is all great in these meetings, and then it gets turned over to us, and we're maintaining it. What we have to maintain is, which we're struggling to do, is a fraction of what's being described here.
We had snow removal this year. It was $75,000.
Yeah.
We had to pay out of pocket because no one comes, and we have doctors, lawyers, and persons that travel. So to say that the city is responsible, they are, but that comes out of our landscaping bill, and that has increased our homeowners due almost by 20%. We went from 140 to we're almost at 200. So while the city is responsible, they're not doing it.
So it's landscaping, snow removal, the streets. It just gets dumped on us after the bond is finished. So it's great that all this really complex, great stuff is getting done. But my question would be, how's it all going to get maintained by these townhomes and these apartments and all that going forward?
I think
because it's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's the Hyatts have said that's the property going to be the property owners.
Yes, it will be. It will be the property owners who are not expert in doing this, and I am an expert in doing this.
Well,
the other thing is no one.
Okay.
But
Can you?
well, hold on before he answers. No one's.
No, I don't want you guys to have a conversation. That's
We're not.
not the way we're going to roll. So, but go ahead.
No one's met with our community.
And we have a
at all.
Yeah, no, keep going.
There's sort of an inference here that we're the adjacent community to this entire thing. She's the president of the association. No one's met with us.
At all.
At all. We don't, in fact, when I bought my home, the developer that was selling the houses, because he knew I was in the real estate business, asked me what I knew about the project. And I was like, I don't know anything. So before the next meeting, it would be really great if somebody comes and meets with our association to discuss this project and sort of how it's going to integrate into our community.
Or even our liaison, at least our liaison.
Yeah, okay, if you could.
You have to sign.
You want to provide us that information, we'll pass it on to the applicant.
Okay, all right, thank
Sure.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yep. Whoever's next, come on up.
Me. I'm a part of this community as well. I am an attorney. I did work in the real estate business. I live with a developer. And when we did buy this house, this was a selling point.
Could you state your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
It's Kara Parker, Kara. Parker. This development was actually one of the selling points for our development.
Address as well, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, 608 James. I'm so sorry. We don't do this in court. 608 James Walker Place, Annapolis. And so we are in that same block that would be directly, I guess, perpendicular
Where
to.
the tree is to come down.
Correct. I know, the tree. I really just wanted to make a couple of global points listening to this. I mean, I endeavor to employ logic in all things. I appreciate what's being done here. I understand this is a business. Again, I have to live with a developer. I do appreciate this. This was one of the things that we were told would increase our property values when we purchased this property. We are not just living next to it, we are living in the shadow of it when it comes up. Before I lived in this community, I lived in one of 3 shopping center communities that are within, a 1 mile radius of this property. And I sat here and I listened tonight, and I'm a defense litigator. So I appreciate a lot of the things that are being said. I appreciate the compliance aspects of this. I appreciate what your job is, the questions that are being asked, and more importantly, what the responses are and why the responses are what they are. And I guess my global question is, or comment, is that I did not hear at any time during this hearing, and perhaps I was not at the first hearing, and I have not been involved in this for 7 years, but we're talking about the larger part of a decade that this has been trying to get done. This has been planned. This has been rendered, we'll say. And I have yet to hear how, in any way, this is the highest and best use for these parcels of land. And I agree with one of the former speakers here. There are significant problems with this property. Again, I mean, one of the selling points for us was that this was going to be redeveloped, and that, you know, there would be some amenities that we would be able to take part in. I think, Commissioner, you said that it would be nice to have the communities come together and it not be this community and that community. That would be nice, you know? When initially we talked about, like, wouldn't it be great to have like a community pool, this kind of a thing? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about putting in another shopping center, mixed-use development property, when frankly, those around us can't even keep the tenants for more than a quarter, 2 quarters at a time. My concern is that while this all sounds really great and it looks beautiful, and even if our community had to suffer, quote unquote, in the shadow of it, I just don't see how it serves a greater purpose for the city and the surrounding communities. I think that the market has been saturated with this type of development in various forms and iterations, and I just don't see how doing this on this bundle of parcels at this time benefits anybody, including, respectfully, the developer in the long run. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoever's next, come on up.
My name's Veronica McNair. I live at 20484 Forest Drive, just down the road from where they're doing all of this. I'm nobody special. I just know that in my community as it is now, we already have like 6 different apartment complexes. Yeah, okay, we need another one. There's that giant one that they're doing on Riva Road. There's down where Air Rink used to be. There's a new one that's up closer to the mall. I live across the street from Allen's Apartments, and I'm wondering how all of this more is going to put more traffic on Forest Drive, which they at one time cut off to stop all the traffic from the original Forest Drive. Now we're putting a big building there to get even more. From Allen's Apartments, we've always had an issue with when they come down that road and come back up again. I've had my fence hit so many times, and it's a good thing I have a fence because I've had my house run into 3 times. So more traffic does not sound good to me. I'm wondering where the street, this new outlet onto Forest Drive is coming down, because I kept seeing the little maps they were doing, and it always seemed to stop at their development just before they get to the end where Allen's Apartments are, which looks like there are a couple of houses down from it. And I'm going, okay, are you going to have a light to let these extra people out? Because we have, on the corner where I live, which is Center Street, it's Noah Taylor Way now, but it used to be Center Street, Forest Drive. We have the City of Annapolis bus that comes regularly. We have Parole School bus, we have middle school bus, we have high school bus. So at that time, you've got all these different buses coming, backing everything up. Then you're gonna have the people who have these apartments coming out during workout and stuff. We've had times where the traffic would be backed up from Route 2 down past my street because everybody is so congested that they're just pulling out into the middle because the light changes before they get anywhere, and then nobody gets anywhere. So I get out and walk. So I'm wondering if they're putting, it looks like it's right across from Link Street, which is right down from my street, Center Street, where they're gonna put a new road out on Forest Drive to have more traffic coming out on Forest Drive. And people are gonna come around there to try and cut off. And Link Street and Center Street, I measured it. Link Street is 16 feet wide. Center Street is 20. You can get a car that parks there, and you're not going to get two cars to come through. Down my street, it's always Mexican standoff. One's got to pull over to the side because there's cars parked there all the time. If there's too much traffic at Allen's apartment and they don't have enough parking there, they come and park on our street. I got a picture. I have to come in sideways almost. I have to enlarge my driveway to come in sideways to actually get into my driveway because there's no room to turn. So I'm wondering with these extra, how many parking places are they allotting for these single homes, single apartments? 2? Okay, because, yeah, 2, it's got to be at least 2. And a lot of times, it might be a single apartment, but that's not all you're going to have in there. All the time, that's not it. So where are they going to park when they don't have any more space? And I saw a little bike route, little design on the, I'm going, there's no room for that. There's no room to enlarge Forest Drive down by my end because some of the houses are like here to there, and that's the house. That's the street, that's the house. I've already given up yardage already once when they enlarged Forest Drive. I don't want to keep giving it up. But that was just some of my points on what I actually saw. People who have a single apartment, they're gonna have kids. Some people are gonna have kids. So what are you gonna tell them? Either, oh, if you got kids, you can't rent here because the schools are already overcrowded. And I don't even think that's legal. So there's a lot of things that you're gonna do what you're gonna do, but these are the issues I'm gonna live with. I'm not going anyplace. My family has lived on that corner since the 50s? 30s. On that corner. My family has lived on the corner of Center Street, Forest Drive, Center Street, and Oaklawn Avenue. We're not going anyplace. We're just going to be there. Forever. We like to be able to get in and out, and the kind of businesses they're putting there might be how the city of Annapolis wants to upgrade itself. It's not doing me no good. I like Shoppers when it was there. What they put in there is not efficient. It's not doing what we need. Yeah, I can go all the way down to Giant and Safeway, but they're a lot more expensive than the one that used to be there that I liked. So upgrading is not doing me any good because raising my property tax only helps you when you're gonna sell. I'm not selling. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, My name is Kelly Connor. I actually work at Ascension Salon and Spa on the corner of Solomon's Island, or Old Solomon's Island and Forest Drive. So I had, a couple concerns that I wanted to address. I can attest to the homeless population in the area. We have had a number of times cars pulling up in the back of the lot, getting out, walking into the woods, and coming back out 5 minutes later. My guess is it's probably a drug exchange. We've had the smell of fires back there. We've had people sleeping on our sidewalk entrance into the salon. Somebody found someone out there at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday. And then apparently they were not dressed either, just sleeping covered up with stuff. We actually had to call the police because we weren't sure if it was a dead body. And then we've had random trash left along the sides of the property. So one of my concerns would be making sure there's a plan in place to make sure the homeless people do not go back into that wooded area once all of this is developed, because that's going to be a massive concern to all of the residents in the area. And then all of the people that are intending to go there to shop, they need to feel safe that they're not going to have issues. One of my other questions was just to find out what kind of time frame there would be on notifying the businesses in the area when construction and deconstruction is going to begin. So I know going through permitting processes and everything takes time. So once this gets approved, or if I should say this gets approved, how long of a time frame is there before you tell the businesses, okay, it's going to be 6 months, and then we're going to start deconstruction. It's going to be a year, and we're going to start, just so that way we have that chance to prepare for what we're going to do while construction's happening, because construction is not going to be a fast thing. It's something that's going to take over a year to get everything cleared out, rebuilt, restarted. And then I had a little question just on a personal note. I know there's a massive, giant tree on Old Solomon's Island Road. I wasn't sure if that was part of where the new development is going, and if this super old tree is getting torn down, or if that's in that safe zone of outside of the development. So I was kind of just curious about that. But that was my main concerns. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Whoever's next, come on up.
Kyle McColgan. I live at 704 Agnes Dorsey Place, so the Neal Farms development. Some of our other residents raised some concerns or issues earlier, but I just had a couple quick questions that I think probably could be answered. I was just curious on Old Solomon's Road, how far the sidewalk would be extended. It doesn't go very far right now, and I understand our community would be directly connected, so it's not as much of a concern, but it would still be nice if it would come down a little bit farther. And then I was also curious in regards to the parking situation with the townhomes. Some had, I was confused whether all had first floor parking or only some of them did. And then how big those garages were. I mean, our garages are 20 feet now, and we already have a parking issue in our community. It's incredibly difficult to fit 2 cars in a 20-foot garage. So I was just curious if all of these garages, what size they were going to be and how many of the townhomes had them. And then visitor parking for those townhomes, where that would be located. And whether for all the townhomes, they were permitted to park in the retail space at all times. So those were...
So quick answer, they're about 20, the garage spaces are about 20 by 20.
Okay, so same as ours.
And they all have 2, from the drawings, they all have 2.
Yeah, ours are 20 now, and it doesn't really work, which is why we're having a parking problem now.
I have a question that I have a note to ask them about parking outside of your 2 spots, but we'll ask them.
Okay.
Stick around. Yeah. We'll ask them that at another time.
Yeah, that was my primary question, was the parking. And then the open spaces. I know that the paths are for everyone, but they were talking about like a, open area for like dogs and stuff. Is that just for the townhome community, or is that for everyone in the neighborhood? Is it, public or private? Those were.
I think I read, and correct me wrong, Mr. Hyatt, but all of those paths were public access.
Yeah, it
All
was
the open
public
space was public access.
Public recreational space.
Cool. Sounds great.
Could you please state your name and address one more time for the record?
Kyle McColgan, 704 Agnes Dorsey Place.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, my name is Aiden Galloway. I live at 704 Agnes Dorsey Place as well. My primary concerns, I just wanted to voice a few things. The first is when putting the paths back in kind of the ravine/forest area, one of the things that we've dealt with as a community is large dumping that I think happened previous to the building of our homes. So one of the things that I would be interested in knowing is whether or not that's going to get cleaned up before the paths go in. Our path is kind of built on there are old tires stuck in the ravine, and there's just a lot of trash. So that would be one thing that I would like to be addressed. I will echo again the parking concerns. As my husband said, there's already an issue with parking in our general community. I think one of the things that I would be concerned with is something our President Shonda said as well, parking kind of on the actual street itself. We can't do that now. It's obviously ingress, egress. So just making that very clear. And then the last, I don't know if I want to say it's a concern, but just consideration that I'd like to bring up. I've lived kind of in the area for a little while. Granted, the first time I moved in here, it was a 500-ish square foot condo for $1,250, and it was very difficult to meet that as a single person in a single bedroom apartment. So I'm just wondering what the price point of some of these single and studios are going to be to accommodate new people coming into the area. I don't want an apartment complex, especially with single bedroom homes or studio apartments, being empty. I think that that's just not great for the community in general, and would not necessarily be great for the commercial space on the bottom as well. So just making sure we're not pricing people out, within reason. I know that Annapolis is very expensive, and that was, however many years ago now, but taking into consideration the small spaces that are going to be rented, just making sure that they're not going to sit empty because they're unaffordable. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't think I know what I want to say.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Pendell Charles. I'm the Ward 3 Alderwoman for the City of Annapolis, representing many of these residents here tonight. And I just want to kind of bring some context to this entire conversation. Ward 3 has 5,000 residents, more businesses than any other ward, over 900. And I would say probably we have about 13 community associations. The largest one, of course, is the Greater Parole Community Association, which has about 380 members. I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, Mr. Hyatt came before the Greater Parole Community Association. They invited him. They were the ones who convened the community meeting for Mr. Hyatt and his son to come and present to the community concerning parole place. That was about 4 or 5 years ago. And so there was some, I would say about 30 residents who came to talk about the project. They had easels up. It was an extremely productive meeting. Part of the information given and part of the angst was the parking as well as the height. Mr. Hyatt went back and corrected many of those things that were brought by the community. Tonight we've heard many of the continuing issues on several different levels my understanding, I don't think there's been a community meeting since about 4 or 5 years ago that they've convened. So I would strongly suggest to them, Ms. Lisa Randall Wilson is the vice president, Mr. Vincent Willard is the chair of the Special Projects Committee on that Greater Parole Community Association. So as a community association, they're the ones that call the meetings. That's number one. Number two, I try to make my rounds as best I can with my community associations. And last week, I reached out to Ms. Shonda to have a community meeting within her community. We had a dialogue by email. There were some concerns that they raised. I indicated to them that I would certainly invite Mr. Hyatt as well as Director Jakubiak, Director Vogel, and anyone else that they asked me to invite to a meeting to discuss any of the issues that they wanted to discuss. And we're still working on that at this point. I just want to make sure that Ms. Shonda knows that that's what we were trying to do and that we're going to do. There was a gentleman in her community who had some issues about the lack of sidewalks because he walks. And so we're going to have a meeting with him, but he's going to be on vacation. So that meeting is going to be convened in July. But I just want to kind of bring some more information to everyone about what's been going on. As I've indicated to all the communities, when you have an issue, please bring it to me. I will convene any kind of meetings that we need to have with the city. And we have an Office of Constituent Services as well. So between all the staff that we have, we normally can work out any issues that are going on. So just wanted to kind of bring that to everyone's attention. I think that's pretty much all I have to say, unless Ms. Shonda thinks I missed something. Okay. Or Ms. Lisa thinks I've missed something. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Have I missed anything? I'm looking, going once, going twice. Thank you so much. And Ms. Debbie Odom is here as our Ward 3 community liaison. And she's going to be working and has been working with the Greater Parole Community Association. So thank you all so very much. Thank you to Mr. Hyde and Mr. Hyde as well for bringing this to our attention. And I think a community meeting is in order, whether they want to have them together or whether they want to have them separate. That's their choice. But I will go with however they want to have those meetings. So thank you all so very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Vincent Willard. I live at 16 Bunch Street in Parole. And nice brief, well put together. There's a lot of information given. I only heard the word, I didn't hear anything about ADA. I looked at some of those buildings, it looked like they were like 4 stories tall. And even the apartments, I think there was only the gentleman who talked about the forestry, talked about something for handicapped, and there was no other mentions of that. I think that needs to be brought to attention. I mean, 4 stories, I'm used to be in pretty good shape, but I don't want to do 4 stories of steps. So, and the other thing is, the property has been jacked up and vacant for a long time and been fully taken advantage by vagrants and people, homeless folks. The woods, they're trying to be out of the way, but they putting something there, should automatically alleviate that. I'm hoping that we could do something that's a problem in this whole country, homelessness. But we're not talking about the whole country. We're talking about my neighborhood, and that needs to be addressed. We also need to know that hopefully that the businesses that go there are businesses that people can afford to get in there and start a business. We have a reputation. I've been in the Marine Corps for all my adult life, and when I say I'm from Annapolis, people spark up and say, "Man, how do you afford to live there?" Well, I got fortunate enough to take care, to get some family property, but there are people here in this community, in this city, that are worthy and have it all, have everything that it takes to be positive business people, except that last line, the funding. You know, and if we're going to be putting businesses out there in the neighborhood like that, let's make it affordable. Let's get some people in there that can, you know, do some things that can afford to be there. I heard somebody here mentioned about the businesses that are open and close up within a couple of months because it's just a hard sell. And I know, you know, people who are planning this development, they're not planning it, you know, for charity's sake, but there's got to be some sort of middle ground, some sort of opportunities for folks to get in there. And that's my little 2-cent worth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, let's move on with the
back to the presentation here. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, Mr. Blasco, please state your name and address for the record. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Mike Klobasco, Wetland Studies and Solutions, 1131 Benfield Boulevard, Suite L, Millersville.
And you're a qualified professional, designated professional wetland scientist. You've been doing forest stand work, wetlands work for over 30 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're familiar with all the city code requirements?
Yes.
Could you just tell us what you handled, what you prepared for this project?
Yeah, I started working on this project in June of 2015. I prepared the initial forest stand delineation and wetland delineation studies. I've been back to the site numerous times since then to update those studies, in particular to update the number and conditions of the significant trees, as well as the increases in the invasive species cover and decreases in actual forest cover as a result of the invasive species.
And how about the natural features of the site? I mean, you heard a little bit about it, but could you talk about the ravines, the trees, wetlands? There's an intermittent stream, slopes as well.
Yes, the site is 10.27 acres in size, of which 4.51 acres qualify as forest. The remaining 5.76 acres of non-forested land are generally comprised of mowed lawn, parking lots, a commercial building, residential homes, and fallow fields. The western and northeastern sections of the site are relatively flat, where most of the existing development is located. Through the center of the site is a large ravine with steep slopes on either side. There's also the headwaters of Church Creek, which originate at an existing storm drain outfall that flows from Forest Drive. The stream up in that area, as already mentioned, there's a 6 to 7 foot head cut. The water literally waterfalls out of the pipe. It's eroded the stream channel from there for a fair distance down through the forest. The stream channel is actively eroding and in need of stabilization. And there are several small wetland pockets along the stream, but this project will not impact them. Do you have the steep slope slide?
Yep.
This slide, as highlighted in green, shows the location of steep slopes, which are defined as slopes of 15% or greater. As you can see from the slide, the development is primarily sited outside of the steep slope areas. The only real incursion into the steep slopes is for the replacement of the existing storm drain pipe and the construction of the step pool conveyance system. And that will essentially be a temporary disturbance because the area will be allowed to reforest post-construction. There's only one mapped highly erodible soil on the property, and that is generally located at the bottom of the ravine, up through and including the stream channel. That's wide water and issue soils. Other than the construction of the step pool conveyance system, the highly erodible soils will not be disturbed.
All right, let's talk about the forest stand and the qualities and species.
Okay. There are 3 forest stands on the subject property, and generally you divide or separate forest stands based on species composition and the general age of the trees for the most part. Stand 1 is located closest to Old Solomon's Island Road.
Sorry.
Do we have a?
Let me just go back to that.
Yeah.
Stands.
I can use that. Are you able to zoom in?
Yep.
If you see the forest off to the left edge of the photo there that scoots in and butts Old Solomon's Island Road, that is stand 1, and it generally extends down along the southern end toward the existing townhomes by Neal Farm. That stand is 1.15 acres in size. It's an early successional stand with a tremendous amount of invasive species covering it, upwards of over 80%. It generally lacks significant environmental features. It doesn't have any steep slopes. It does not contain any significant trees. And it's important to note that back in 2015, when I did my original forest stand delineation study, the stand was actually 1.34 acres in size. But because of the extensive invasive vine cover covering the trees and killing them, the stand has reduced in size by 0.2 of an acre in the last 10 years along its southern edge. It also contains a fair amount of trash, and because of its high invasive species cover and low percentage of native species in it, it's a low priority for retention. The second stand, stand 2, is comprised of 3 substands. And a substand is really, it's the same type of forest community, but it's just not contiguous. So there's 3 pockets of forest that are essentially made up of the same species. 2 of them are on the left side of the ravine, and the third substand is on the right side. And they generally follow along the steep slopes of the ravine. That comprises stand 2. You'll find yellow poplar, large oaks like northern red and chestnut oak and sycamore and sweet gum on here. The kudzu stand actually crosses a portion of this stand, but because the stand contains significant environmental features such as steep slopes, significant trees, stream buffers, it is rated for a high priority for retention. Stand 3 is a mature bottomland mixed hardwood forest. It is 0.98 acres in size, and it is found in the bottom of the ravine. That's down where the stream is, and it has a lower amount of invasive species cover, but it contains significant environmental features, including the stream, non-tidal wetlands, stream valley buffer, and thus it is also high priority for retention, which, other than the construction of the step pool conveyance system, we will be preserving it.
So do you think you could prepare a sheet for next time that actually has this diagram that
Stands?
actually illustrates the stands?
Yeah.
That would be really helpful.
I have the FSD. I'll bring it. Okay.
Okay.
Yep, sorry, go ahead. Let me get to the forest conservation. Just wanna get-
Seven.
Yep, I just want to get the right sheet here. 124. All right. So the last point we're going to make with Mr. Klobasco and then close out with Mr. Harrison is our variance request to remove those 14 significant trees. Well, I'll let Mr. Klobasco go through them, but could you just identify them and then we'll go through the criteria.
So before we do that, I have a question for staff. So, you know, this sort of two parts to this forest conservation piece with respect to variances. And the first one is that the department makes a determination that a variance is warranted here. And so, you know, that's after working with the applicant to look at how the ideas for forest retention have been exhausted, resulting in the need for a variance. So before you start working through the second piece that has the criteria for the variance, I'd like to ask staff to talk a little bit about the history of how you determined that a variance was required.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have our urban forester, Brian Adams, talk.
Okay.
Good evening. Brian Adams, Urban Forester, City of Annapolis. So essentially, the section of code you're referring to, essentially their exhaustion of their priority retention, you know, it was my opinion that they had preserved what was the most important. Most of the development is occurring in stand 1. There's a minimal amount of development and clearing proposed in stand 2, and I believe that it's close to no acreage in the steep slopes. So basically, you know, the site, most of the site, 75% of it is high priority for retention. So to avoid that significantly, I'm sorry. So anyway, the 4.51 acres of forest, 75% is classified as high priority. And so what they've done is they've essentially avoided clearing in stand 2 and 3. 3 being the highest priority, being down in that stream bed. And again, 2, they're doing very minimal clearing. And the clearing that they are doing, the significant trees, as they've brought up in the past, they're mostly poor, some are fair. I've been out to the site with them. I've looked at a lot of stand 1 and as well as part of stand 2. And, you know, the trees are in really poor condition. But of course, that part's up to you guys as far as the variance for the significant trees. But any more questions on the other sections, you know, just let me know.
And this may be not a fair question because Mr. Smith has moved on to greener pastures, but over the years that the talk of this development and through the work sessions, you guys have sort of jockeyed things around and tried to fit things in to do the best you can with respect to the trees. I mean, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, they
That's
have.
happened,
I have
or-
not been involved in this project for as long as some of them, you know, as Tom worked on this for the most part. And I've just sort of come in here at the end. But really what they've done is they've avoided, you know, all of the significant features on the site. You know, we've got the intermittent stream. non-tidal wetlands, the steep slopes, and they've done a good job of keeping their development envelope along the outer edges of this property. You know, they've reduced the amount of parking by adding the second tier parking structure, so that we feel like they've done a really good job of avoiding the most important pieces of this forest. And with their proposed reforestation and street trees, I think they're going to end up with a net gain of canopy on the site.
And so you really think they've essentially done the best they can?
Yeah, I think to avoid
given what's happened,
to avoid it 100%
constraints
with the size of this parcel and how much of it is the higher priority stands 2 and 3. I think to avoid it 100% would be somewhat unreasonable. I think they've done a really good job of keeping it to a minimum and only impacting the significant trees that are fair to poor value. And for the most part, you know, the higher quality forest is being preserved, as well as the fair to some of the fair and all of the good, good condition trees.
I have a quick question. Do you also agree that it makes sense to use our current forest conservation worksheet?
So I do, but I do think that that's sort of a legal question as well, because I'm not sure, because they submitted this prior to that code change, I'm not sure if legally they have to submit it, but I don't think that that's really going to change the outcome as far as mitigation is concerned. So I think it would be, I think
Useful.
they should.
Yeah,
go ahead
especially
and
because
use
there's no break-even point.
Right. I think it, because it's so close to when the change was made, and I don't think it's going to have a, significant impact on their numbers. I think they should go ahead and submit that.
Thanks.
Anybody else have questions about, the efforts to retain the most forest possible? Anybody else questions about that?
I have a question about the easement. And from many of our conversations how hard it is to keep the trees alive in our easements. What's your suggestion on how to do that?
I think that in our easement documents, we need to be a little more specific about maintenance and what's going to be required. And I think that needs to lead to giving the Conservation Board a little more leverage to be able to call those things into question when they find them and have them addressed. The funding is always an issue for the HOAs, and we had some public testify to that fact earlier, that you put this in and it's great, but who's going to maintain it years down the road? And it's something to consider. Not only the stormwater management, but then as you mentioned, the easement as well. Maintaining that, it comes at a cost. So.
Right, and the city doesn't have a budget for it, and HOAs are being burdened. So somewhere along the lines, it's got to be in writing and really clear who has the obligation.
I would agree.
Okay, if nobody else has any questions, thank you, Mr. Adams, appreciate it. So now we can go back and, so do you want to walk us through the 6 criteria for the variance?
Yep, I think I'm going to have Mr. Kvasko speak on a couple points first, and then yes, we'll go through those 6 criteria.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify some testimony from Mr. Newton earlier. He mentioned that there were 14 significant trees being removed. There's actually 25, but I think only 4 of them actually would require a variance in this case, and those would be trees 1 through 7, 11, 29, 37, 41, 43, and 260. The other 11 trees are between 24 and 29 inches in diameter, and they're in poor or fair condition, and they're not of notable quality or high value. And in my opinion, because of that, they should not require a variance. The 14 remaining trees that do require a variance, they're 30 inches and greater in size, and would require a variance as well, because of it's required under state law as well. Of the 14 trees that require a variance for removal, 10 of those trees are in poor or worse condition and generally in declining health and do not warrant preservation. The other 4 trees, 11, 29, 37, and 260, are rated in fair condition, but are adversely affected by existing vine cover or have been subjected to overhead power line pruning. None of the 4 trees listed in fair condition are of suitable quality to warrant preservation. In addition, tree 29 is located within the footprint of the proposed step-well conveyance system, as well as within the city's existing sewer easement area, and cannot be preserved.
So hitting on the variance criteria, could you describe the special conditions peculiar to the property which cause this unwarranted hardship?
Sure. First, this is a relatively small site that contains 73 significant trees, which are widely scattered throughout the property. Avoidance of all these trees would prevent any reasonable use of the property for which it is currently zoned. Furthermore, preservation of the 14 significant trees proposed for removal would also cause an unwarranted hardship through a significant loss of connected developable area. In an effort to preserve as much of the existing forest on the site, particularly those forested areas within sensitive habitats such as steep slopes, the intermittent stream, and contiguous wetlands, development has been concentrated along the existing road frontage and developed areas of the site. Second, 10 of the trees to be removed are in poor or worse condition and do not warrant preservation. Given the overall poor health of these trees, preservation could be a safety hazard to the people and surrounding structures, further contributing to the unwarranted hardship that would result if the variance request is not approved.
Okay, and could you describe how enforcement of these rules will deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in similar areas?
Other similarly zoned properties that encounter trees in a similar condition and in similar locations on the site would be provided the same considerations during the review of the requested variance application. Furthermore, trees with similar circumstances on other properties are routinely granted variances for removal in the city of Annapolis, including several projects I've worked on in the past.
Which projects are those?
I've worked on quite a few, but Parkside Preserve, the villages at Providence Point, just to name 2.
Okay. And could you verify
In the write-up here, it also lists Tyler Heights and Newtown 20. Did you work on either one of those 2?
What were the 2?
Tyler Heights and
The
Newtown
Tyler
20?
Heights Elementary School or Newtown 20 redevelopment? Did you work on either one of those?
I did not work on either of those.
Could you verify that granting the variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that would be not denied to other applicants?
It will not confer special privilege. The applicant is proposing to remove 10 trees that are in poor or worse condition that pose a risk to life and property. Variances are routinely granted for the removal of trees in these conditions in the city of Annapolis. 13 of the 14 trees that require a variance to be removed are located within areas most suitable for development and that also maximize preservation of the priority areas on the property, and they cannot be preserved without jeopardizing the overall project. As previously stated, in an effort to preserve as much of the existing higher quality forest as possible, development was concentrated along the existing road frontage in already developed areas.
And thank you. And could you verify that the variance request is not based on conditions or circumstances which are the result of actions by the applicant or any previous owner of the property?
It is not. The requested variance for the removal of the 14 trees is due to their condition and location on the site, as well as limitations of the site design based on other regulated environmental features such as steep slopes, priority forests, the intermittent stream, and city-mandated stormwater management.
And can you verify that the request does not arise from condition relating to land or building use, either permitted or non-conforming, on a neighboring property?
It does not.
And then could you please verify that granting of a variance will not adversely affect the water quality?
To ensure that there will not be an adverse effect on waterways in the immediate area of the project, All grading and construction will be done in accordance with a City of Annapolis approved sediment erosion control plan that provides for adequate sediment erosion control and post-disturbance stormwater management. In addition, the project will construct a step pool conveyance system to reduce existing stream bank erosion and to provide a stable outfall for stormwater which does not exist out there today.
Thank you.
And so I think it was from a prior witness that there's basically nothing happening there now, and it's in pretty bad shape. And so do you feel that the addition of the stormwater management here is going to, what's the effect going to be on water quality?
Oh, it'll absolutely be an improvement, because right now, like I said, from the pipe down to the bow is about a 6 to 7 foot drop. There's that much. It used to be level with the pipe. It no longer is, because as all that untreated runoff, I think Mr. Newton said there was 18.27 acres of drainage coming to the site. I don't believe any of that currently has stormwater management. So every time you get a rain, you get a massive pulse of water over a pretty big area coming out of that pipe. It's just blowing the stream out. And so you're getting a tremendous amount of sediment and sedimentation moving down through Church Creek.
Okay.
This will help stop that.
Is Church Creek impaired?
I haven't been all the way down through there. I know there were other stream restoration projects that were done by Church Creek down by Aristide Allen Boulevard.
And have you talked to the South River Federation or Arundel Rivers just about their plans for stream restorations in the area?
I did not, but whether they have plans for stream restoration or not, this is on our site, and this is our ability to control the stormwater and to fix a major problem within the watershed, actually at the very head of the watershed.
Just curious, a lot of times people coordinate just to talk about, like, if this feeds into a body of water that's impaired, what is going to be the impact of your project? So I'm just curious if you've talked to any of those people.
I did not, because I see it as a huge improvement.
Okay. And then last thing here, can you just verify that the project complies with all the standards related to natural resources protection for planned developments?
In my professional opinion, it does.
That's the end of my questions for Mr. Klobasco. Anything else from the commissioners?
Any gypsy moth infestation?
Not that I saw.
Okay, thanks.
But we do have tree of heaven out there. I have not seen any lanternflies yet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klobasco.
And thank you for accommodating my schedule.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Harrison, could you come back up real quick? Here again.
No, I'm going to do better than that.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to have Mr. Harrison go through the variance standards for the trees and.
Okay, thank you. I agree with everything Mr. Klobasco said, point by point. My addressing each of the standards would probably be redundant with a little bit of planarese thrown in just because that's what I do. So I will accept his testimony as the testimony that I would give, at least 90% of it, if that's okay with Mr. Hyatt.
Is there anything else you care to add?
I just want to add that I think this project and the variance request meets all the code standards and requires, and this project does merit approval based upon all the information you've seen in the applications that we've submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That's all the questions I have, unless Mr. Hyatt, the elder, has any other questions or remarks.
Alan Hyatt for the record, and it's tough sitting here not speaking, but I'm trying to get used to that at this stage of my career. But I would like to make a few comments. And I think most of you know this. This is the tip of the iceberg. We have spent years on this project, and we have spent a lot of time with Tom Smith and the predecessors out of the office from the Department of Planning and Zoning. And we have painstakingly gone through this property and have identified trees to save and not save. We cannot make this work without a variance. It just won't work. And we have allocated the development in the best area where we disturb the least amount of trees. And I, just responding to some of the concerns that were raised, is this the highest and best use? Probably the highest and best use is a Wawa at the corner here. But we recognize that the city of Annapolis has a comprehensive plan, and it has a comprehensive plan in process. And we believe that we fulfill the directives of that plan by offering a mixed-use development. What we're offering here is not the highest-end housing, because you can go to Riva Road and you can spend $4,000 a month on a two-bedroom apartment. We're not going to be in that range. I don't know what we will ultimately charge, because we don't know what the final costs are going to be and when we'll get this actually built. But we want to be good stewards of this site. We know that there's going to be expenses that we incur for maintenance on the site. I mean, if we have apartments, we're not passing that on. I mean, yes, to some extent in the rents, but we're owners, and we know we're going to have to maintain the property. And with respect to the townhouses, we're not sure whether we're going to rent or sell. Again, that depends on the market. We may rent all of it, in which event we will remain as owners, and it's our responsibility to maintain. So, I can tell you to echo a couple of the concerns raised, we have had a rough time with trespassing on this property. It has been difficult. And when I reached out to the police chief for APF purposes and his team, they were delighted, just delighted that we were going to do something on this property, because from a police point of view, people living on the site will make all the difference in the world. I mean, now we have unauthorized dumping, we have trespassing, we have fires, all the things that Ms. Wilson said, and then some. And the longer this goes on, the worse it is, and the more kudzu is going to take over the site. It's an environmental mess right now. And we've developed a step pool procedure for stormwater at the direction of the Department of Public Works. I mean, this is not inexpensive stuff. We think that we're going to do a good job. We hope that we can attract retail. We had talked about putting a market here, and you heard a little bit about that. The one gentleman wanted to, had good suggestions about businesses that might be able to afford to come there. I've talked to Alderwoman Pindell Charles about it. We've had meetings. We would love to see local businesses start small in our market, our potential market there. We'd like to retain some of our existing tenants. So, change comes difficulty, with difficulty, I should say, from others. But, Neal Farms is a brand new project. I would hope we're not going to get criticized by a brand new project. I think when we first started, that was just barely on the books. So we're going to be good neighbors to them, and if they want to meet, I'm happy to meet. There's certainly no slight intended by not meeting with them. We're happy to meet with anybody, and we've met with the Greater Parole Community Association on multiple occasions. We've changed our design. We could have had more parking, but we're not, because parking's not always, too much parking is not good either. And it's a balance. So I appreciate you letting me say a few words, and hopefully we can conclude at the next hearing. We'll try to wrap up with the Department of Public Works. We're disappointed that we couldn't get that finalized, for adequacy of public facilities. But APF, adequacy of public facilities, has been a struggle in this city ever since the law was adopted. There's just not a great procedure. Ms. Butler mentioned the recreation and parks situation. I mean, it's just, and I know Mr. Jakubiak's working on it, and I give him credit for trying to fix it, but it's, from this vantage point, from our side of the table, it's very difficult to make that process work. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, and thank you for accommodating Mr. Klobasco and letting us get our case in chief done in one night. Thank you.
Okay, public hearing remains open until next time. I'm ready to just wrap it up.
Yeah, so we just wrap up and do those other two pieces.
Okay. All right, so this concludes tonight's hearing. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for the public that came out to express their concerns.
Yes.
We really do appreciate you telling us what you think.
Any idea on what happens to Sin Fronteras? That's one of my favorite
I know.
restaurants.
I saw Walter Vasquez said he's gone.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. You know I can walk there from my office, so.
So,
before moving on to the next item?
Yeah, that would be good.
can we just do those like in 2 minutes? I think they're good. I mean,
We're just gonna do it in 2 minutes, right?
I know, 'cause I'm like,
It's cold and we haven't had a bathroom break. But if it's gonna be 2 minutes, I'm fine.
maybe it'll clear out if we. Oh, we're just going to adopt the.
oh, it's the approval of findings of the court. I mean, I'm going to abstain.
Was this from last time?
Yeah, so we just need a motion to approve this.
Okay, motion to approve findings 02623 Forest Conservation Plan Appeals.
I motion to adopt the findings drafted and circulated at our last meeting.
Second.
Is it too loud? I know.
Could everybody please move the conversation outside? We're just going to finish up the meeting. Thank you, sorry.
You might have to repeat that. I missed
Where's
the motion that you guys
Okay.
did. I missed.
Sorry, we're just trying to finish up our last little business here.
All right, so,
So we had a motion.
okay, motion of approval of findings 02623
2623.
Forest Conservation Plan Appeals.
And I made a motion to approve.
So you seconded
I seconded
the
it.
motion?
Yep.
Let's call for the vote.
Call for the vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
And I
Aye.
abstained since I wasn't here, so.
Okay, aye.
Okay, you got that, Kim? Okay. And then the thing we added was the approval of the recommendation of the city council for the maritime report.
There's
Correct.
not a motion for that one, right? Did we second?
Yep, I motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I just abstained because I wasn't at that meeting also.
Are you abstaining from that one as well?
Yes, yeah. Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.